Chapter 2342. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly broke through the air. Chu Luiyue heard the noise and looked up instinctively. It was actually a golden stream of light. It was dazzling, holy, and powerful. It was wrapped in a heavy pressure, causing people to unconsciously feel reverence and submission. In an instant, the stream of light fell into the palace of the illusory god. Then Chu Luiyue and the others saw that the black whip that was tightly binding Lan Zhao's arm was suddenly covered by the golden light. In the next moment, the black whip seemed to have encountered something terrifying and quickly retreated. When Emo Shichen saw this scene, a deep look of shock flashed across his face. He took a few steps back uncontrollably and almost fell to the ground. He looked like he was in a sorry state. Lan Zhao's tense body suddenly relaxed. When he saw the golden stream of light, he closed his eyes and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, he made a move. Everyone was shocked by this sudden scene. What was going on? Someone made a move and forcibly stopped the Divine Master? That low and hoarse voice contained a trace of suppressed anger as it asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter? Emperor, are you trying to interfere with the palace of the illusory god?" Instantly this voice spread far and wide and clearly fell into everyone's ears. Almost everyone's face was filled with disbelief. Chu Luiyue was also shocked. Emperor? Emperor. It was actually this person who made a move? Xiaoran, who was beside him, murmured, "How is this possible? Didn't the emperor never get involved in these things? How come this time?" Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Xiaoran and asked seriously, "Senior Xiaoran, what is going on? What is the emperor's identity? Since he is so respected, why can't he interfere with the palace of the illusory god?" Xiaoran took a deep breath and explained, "Because he is not the master of the palace of the illusory god. The emperor's status is indeed unparalleled because he is the one who inherited the heavenly Tao and controls thousands of deities in the world. Even the Divine Master can't be compared to him. Even the Divine Master was personally enlightened by the emperor to ascend to the heavens and become a deity. However, the monarch has never cared about anything. Even when the palace of the illusory god caused a ruckus, the monarch didn't interfere, right? However, I don't know what happened today, but it actually alarmed the emperor. His intention for stopping the Divine Master in front of so many people was obvious. Chu Luiyue's mind was full of thoughts. So that was how it was. No wonder the Divine Master had such a big reaction. Everyone present was also shocked. The Celestial Emperor's sudden move also showed his attitude. How could it not cause others to overthink? Then a figure slowly appeared in the void. Chu Luiyue looked up and frowned. This person was not an emperor, but the one who had appeared at Herb Mountain that day. Just like last time, this person did not reveal his face or figure this time. He only said indifferently, "The emperor had no such intention. Today he acted only to punish the sixth divine envoy." As soon as he finished speaking, the bronze mirror fell into a dead silence. Emo Shichen's legs went weak and he looked panicked. He almost knelt on the ground. "It's coming? It's still coming. What did the sixth oracle do wrong?" After a long while the Divine Master spoke. However, the anger and forbearance from before seemed to have dissipated a lot. The man chuckled. "What did he do wrong? Those who should know clearly know." The Divine Master said no more. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed. There was a deep meaning in his words. Emo Shichen had done a lot of things in the world of divine ruins. This Divine Master obviously knew about it. Yes, the first divine envoy had sent Jiu Long and Shi Yen, two divine envoys, to the god-slaying tomb to find the last Guqin score. It was obvious that the Divine Master wanted it. In this way all the things that Emo Shichen had done to her could be explained. But this seemed to have angered the emperor? Emo Shichen can't be the sixth divine envoy. Since that's the case, why waste time and energy to reconstruct his divine body? That person laughed. "Now that the emperor wants his life, you want to fight with the emperor?" After a long while, that low and hoarse voice finally sounded. "I don't dare. But the second priest's identity is special, especially to the palace of the illusory god. You don't need the emperor to remind you of this, right? Of course, if you insist, you can continue. But someone has to bear the consequences." It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Chu Luiyue finally heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he didn't intend to interfere in Lan Zhao's matter, but in fact he had blocked all paths. The Divine Master of the palace of the illusory god had no choice. Lan Zhao's life was saved. Sure enough, after a long silence that voice said, "Since this is the emperor's intention, then, let's forget about it." But the second priest's mistake back then cannot be forgiven. He will still be detained in the palace of the illusory god and never be released. Lan Xiao cursed and sneered. Don't worry. I've lived longer than you. Wasn't it just enduring? He had endured so many years. What was this short time? Sooner or later, the next moment, that golden light flew out and easily trapped Mo Shiqian. Everyone only heard a short and hurried scream. Then Mo Shiqian's figure disappeared. All that was left was a streak of golden light that flew out from within. The figure in the void raised his hand and caught that light. Then he left without hesitation. Almost at the same time, the bronze mirror floating in the air also flew out quickly and disappeared behind the door of the palace of the illusory god. The commotion ended abruptly just like that. Everyone didn't even have time to figure out what had happened before they realized that everything had calmed down. Many people looked at each other. Clearly they hadn't digested what had just happened. Chu Luiwei rubbed his forehead and sighed softly. No matter what, Lan Xiao had escaped. Also, after this incident, the divine master of the palace of the illusory god shouldn't do anything similar to him anymore. It wasn't hard to tell from the words just now that Lan Xiao had a trump card that made the other party wary. As for what it was hard to say, but it was still a good thing. I wonder how Mo Shiqian offended the emperor. He was actually stripped of his position as the sixth divine envoy? Xiaoran murmured strangely. Chu Luiwei clenched his fists. Because he was too nervous just now, his hands were cold and numb. Only now did they recover slightly. The commotion is over. Let's go back. At the same time, the divine envoys in the palace of the illusory god all had different reactions when they heard what had happened to Mo Shiqian. Bang. She swept all the things on the table to the floor with a single sweep. This Mo Shiqian, how dare he lie to me? Jianghu happened to pass by the door and heard the sounds of things being smashed. She stopped in her tracks and shook her head. Xu Jing was really too smart for his own good. She thought that everything was under her control, but she didn't know that many things had already deviated from the original track. In the end, the one who was tricked the most was the one who suffered the most. Mo Shiqian's position as the divine envoy had been revoked, which proved that the emperor's previous warning was not just for show. If Xu Jing continued like this, it would end up the same way sooner or later. But actually, his own situation wasn't any better. Thinking of what had happened before, he clenched his fists and continued to walk forward. Chu Luiwei and the others walked towards their residence. But after taking a few steps, a figure appeared out of the corner of her eye. She stopped in her tracks and looked in that direction. In the distance, a person was kneeling under the wall of the palace of the illusory god. Mu Yafeng. Unlike before, her clothes were a little messy, and a few strands of her hair were scattered. She knelt there silently with her head lowered, looking very disheveled. Obviously she didn't want to kneel. What happened to her? Chu Luiwei asked. Xiaoran followed her line of sight and clicked her tongue. You mean her? As she was caught cheating on the star path. She has been kneeling for a few days. Cheating? Yes. I heard that the seventh divine envoy taught her a lot in private, which allowed her to break several Shen arrays in succession. The first divine envoy found out about this and punished her severely. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Previously, she did find it a little strange because she knew clearly that Mu Yafeng's talent was not enough to support her breaking those Shen arrays in succession. But at that time she was busy with her own matters and didn't pay much attention to it. She didn't expect that Jianghu helped her in private. The seventh divine envoy. Why would she do this? Wasn't this a little too bold? Who knows? Anyway, not only was Mu Yafeng punished by kneeling, she was also stripped of the right to walk the star path. From now on, she is not allowed to take a step on the star path. Xiaoran laughed, but his expression was a little cold. Now, many people are suspecting that her previous performance was due to the help of the seventh divine emissary. Things had become so ugly, it was no wonder that people would think so much. But, if she can't walk the star path, doesn't that mean that she can no longer enter the palace of the illusory god and ascend to the heavens and become a god? Yes. But who can be blamed for this? Xiaoran shrugged. Originally, if she cultivated honestly and comprehended one by one, there might be some hope. But now she couldn't take it anymore and cut off all her escape routes. She just deserved it. He didn't know how many years he had been trapped in the last Shen formation, but he didn't think of using any other methods. This Mu Yafeng was so powerful that she could make the seventh divine envoy do this for her. Chu Luiwei paused. Didn't the seventh divine envoy help to plead for mercy? How can the seventh divine envoy care about this? Now even he has been stripped of the right to control the star path. By the way, you just came back so you don't know about this. Chu Luiyue didn't know what to say for a moment. She had only been away for a short period of time and so many things had happened. Then who is in charge of the Star Path now? I heard that it was handed over to the 5th Divine Envoy. But the 5th Divine Envoy isn't a Shen master, and I don't know why the 1st Divine Envoy chose him. We all thought that he would choose the 11th Divine Envoy, who is also a Shen master. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched. By the way, the 9th and 10th Divine Envoys left the Divine Gate. Have they returned? Xiaoran nodded. They returned a long time ago. But these two aren't in the Illusory God Palace now, but in the Illusory God Ocean. I heard that they made some mistakes, but we don't have the right to ask and we only know the general idea. Mistakes. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Was it because they didn't succeed in bringing back the music score? But at that time in the God-slaying tomb, the two disappeared inexplicably. She didn't expect that they would be locked in the Illusory God Ocean after returning. She suddenly thought of something and asked, Senior Xiaoran, have you seen the 1st Divine Envoy? He had even seen Lan Xiao and the others. Logically speaking, he should have some understanding of the 1st Divine Envoy, right? Xiaoran paused. Are you asking about the previous one or the current one? Digression, 6 o'clock. Chapter 2344. Chu Luiyue blinked and asked curiously, You've met these two before? Xiaoran nodded, then shook his head. You can say that. But I've only seen them from afar. I don't really know them. Not to mention the previous one, he was still young at that time and didn't have much of an impression of him. And the current one. She was also very low-key and mysterious, rarely showing her face. Although Xiaoran had stayed in the Illusory God Palace for a long time, he hadn't fully comprehended all the Shen formations on the Star Path and entered the Illusory God Palace, so he hadn't been able to get close to the 1st Divine Envoy. Not to mention him, even the other Divine Envoys couldn't see the 1st Divine Envoy's face in recent years. I wonder what the 1st Divine Envoy is busy with. I can't describe it, but if I see him, I'll definitely recognize him. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips, feeling a little disappointed. Seeing her reaction, Xiaoran couldn't help but laugh. Why? You seem to be very curious about the 1st Divine Envoy? Chu Luiyue's lips curved. There shouldn't be anyone in the Illusory God Palace who isn't curious about this, right? Actually, if you really want to see him, you can wait a few more months. Xiaoran raised his chin. The gate of heaven will open for a year. When the time is up, the gate of heaven will close. At that time, all the cultivators in the Illusory God Palace can enter the Illusory God Palace. At that time, all the Divine Envoys will appear, including the 1st Divine Envoy. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered. Really? Of course. This is the old rule of the Illusory God Palace. The gate of heaven opens once every 10,000 years and every time, it will attract many cultivators, but in the end, only a few can ascend to the heavens and become gods. There's no need to talk about those who succeed. Those who fail are either driven out of the gate of heaven and left to fend for themselves, or forced to stay here and continue to cultivate, waiting for the next gate of heaven to open. But there aren't many who can really endure it. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. So, the opportunity to ascend to the heavens and become gods only comes once every 10,000 years. Yes. Xiaoran said with a self-mocking smile. My strength and luck were both a little lacking. I stayed at the final profound formation for several years, but I still didn't make any progress. Even after so long, he still hadn't succeeded. To be honest, I don't even know how long I've been waiting. Over time, he had come to terms with it. It would be best if he could comprehend the Shen formation, complete the Star Path, and enter the Illusory God Palace to wait for his breakthrough. If I can't do it, I'll just muddle along. Chu Luiyue said softly, You can definitely do it. Xiaoran didn't care about it and placed his hands behind his head. Forget it, there's nothing much to see here. Let's go back. Chu Luiyue and the others returned to their residence. However, Mao Zhen did not travel with them. Instead, she chose a different direction. It probably had something to do with the great phoenix dragon's ancestor, so Chu Luiyue did not ask further. Rong Xiu was resting in the room, but Yan Qing had already disappeared. Hearing the footsteps, Rong Xiu looked up. Has the matter at the Yuntian Tower been resolved? Chu Luiyue asked. Rong Xiu nodded. It's all a small matter. Don't worry. As for you, I heard that Senior Lan Xiao appeared? Yes. Chu Luiyue's expression turned serious as she briefly repeated what happened. Luckily it was a close call. Senior Lan Xiao should be temporarily safe for a period of time after this. It's a pity that he's trapped in the Illusory God Palace. It's really difficult to find where he's imprisoned. It's even more difficult to rescue him. Rong Xiu kissed her forehead. The more it's like this, the more we can't be too hasty. I know. Chu Luiyue sighed softly and then said, besides, I really didn't expect Senior Lan Xiao to be the second priest of the illusory god palace, and Debao, Diwu Zhang's identity could not be confirmed yet, but there was no doubt that these two people were priests. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes and did not speak. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and said, the illusory god palace is also searching for the music score. Now that I'm back, there's no reason they don't know that it's with me now. Why haven't they done anything yet? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. The music score has already recognized you as its owner. Even if they want to snatch it, can they? That's true. Now Chu Luiyue had the upper hand. The music score was obviously very important to the illusory god palace. The more important it was, the more cautious they would be and would not dare to act rashly. Especially now that the three music scores were all with her, they had become Chu Luiyue's life-saving trump card. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and said, I plan to rest for a while first, then directly complete the star path and officially enter the illusory god palace. Rong Xiu looked at her. Okay. When the time comes, I'll go with you. Lan Zhao's matter could be considered to have come to an end for the time being. After the commotion, Chu Luiyue was much more relieved. Debao and Lan Zhao's identities were so special, and it was obvious that they had a certain trump card that made the other party wary. In that case, there would be ample room to make more preparations for the rescue of them. As for Diwu Zhangze, although he was not a priest, he was locked up together with Debao and Lan Xiao, so there was probably some connection between them. At least now they knew where he was locked up. Chu Luiyue had just taken back the last music score, so she planned to use this time to integrate the third music score. In the room, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged, surrounded by a layer of silver-red flowing light. Soon, a stone rolled out from the universe ring on her hand and floated quietly in the divine realm. The space around the stone distorted for a moment, but it quickly returned to normal. Then, the second stone, the third stone. Soon Chu Luiyue was surrounded by these stones. She closed her eyes and her thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly. The bright light shone on her face and her skin was clear and white like jade. She followed the tone of the music in her memory and began to arrange the stones around her. She had heard the complete music score once in the god-slaying tomb, so what she needed to do now was to integrate these scattered pieces of music and then combine them with the first two pieces. Chapter 2345. This was easier said than done. Chu Luiyue had tried it once in the god-slaying mound, but she did not succeed. The third score had been cut too thoroughly. She held her breath and raised her hands gently. The stones began to arrange themselves in a certain order. However, even if Chu Luiyue followed the tune she heard and placed them in the correct position one by one, it did not go as smoothly as she had expected. Because there seemed to be an invisible barrier between these stones, and they even faintly contradicted each other. The more stones gathered together, the more obvious this resistance was. Chu Luiyue's brows gradually furrowed. Finally, at a certain moment, the stones in front of her scattered with a loud bang. Chu Luiyue opened her eyes. She realized that with her current strength, it was basically impossible for her to completely control it. Even if she was already a god, when these stones did not listen to her, she really could not do anything about it. Every single one of them contained the aura of a Tao sovereign. Chu Luiyue was not satisfied and tried a few more times. But no matter what method she used, the final result was the same. In the end, Chu Luiyue finally chose to give up. Forget it. She stood up and put away the divine territory and the stones. It was probably useless to force it now. She lifted her feet and walked out. Treasure Pavilion, second floor. In the room, Xianxia was lying on a small couch, playing with a divine weapon in his hands in boredom. Sigh. He let out a long sigh and turned over. When will these days come to an end? Ever since he returned to the Illusion God Palace, he had been on the second floor for a long time, not daring to step out of the door. Who would not feel suffocated? Knock knock. Second Master. That was Mingshu's voice. Xianxia said lazily. Come in. Zhao pushed the door open and came to Yanji's side, handing over the things in his hands. Second Master, this is this month's account book. Please take a look. Yanji's eyelids twitched. There hasn't been much business this month. What's there to look at? Tisk. Although the number of people who came here to buy herbs had decreased after the herb mountain reopened, there were still many other businesses in the store. Is it really okay for you to be so casual? Xianxia glanced at him. Are you scolding me? Mingshu immediately said, this subordinate dares not. Xianxia snorted, but still took the account book and flipped it open. You can hide your thoughts a little deeper. His lips twitched and he cleverly changed the topic. Second master, you've been here for a long time. Why hasn't the first master said anything? At the mention of this, Jianghu felt wronged. He let out a long sigh. Sigh, there's nothing we can do about it. Since his master had given his orders, he naturally had to obey. However, I heard that Madam has been quite active recently. I reckon that victory is in sight. Mingshu smiled. I heard that second master and Madam are old acquaintances. When he sees you, he will definitely be very happy. Yanji's brows twitched. Hiss. Based on his understanding of that person, if he knew that the second master of Treasure Pavilion was him, then, when the time came, would he still have a way out? Thinking of this, Jianghu hurriedly said, No hurry, no hurry. It wouldn't be too late to talk about this when his master also decided to show up. At least he could block it for a while, right? As Jianghu spoke, he flipped a few more pages and couldn't help but rub his forehead. So I really don't want to read this. If the third oracle is still... His voice stopped abruptly. Mingshu's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a commotion outside. Master Mingshu? It was Chu Liyue's voice. Jianghu and Mingshu quickly exchanged glances. Jianghu was quick to react. He stuffed the account book back into Mingshu's hands and disappeared in a flash. His actions were as fast as lightning. Mingshu, Master Mingshu, are you there? Chu Liyue waited on the first floor for a while. Seeing that there was no one, he decided to go upstairs to take a look. After calling out twice, Mingshu finally pushed open a door and walked out. Miss Xuanhuan, you, call me Madame Rong. Chu Liyue said. Since Rong Xiao was here, this title was more appropriate. Mingshu's eyelids twitched. Yes, madam. Chu Liyue vaguely felt that it was a little strange. She wanted to correct him but thought that it wasn't a big deal, so she didn't mention it. Master Mingshu, I'm here this time to copy the rest of the mythical flame diagram. Mingshu had expected that she was here for the mythical flame diagram, but he was still stunned when he heard her words. All of it? Chu Liyue nodded slightly. There seemed to be a faint glow in his clear black eyes. Yes, all of it. Peach Blossom Cove. You mansion. Sanson held the account book and walked unsteadily through the corridor with small steps. Suddenly, his nose felt itchy and he sneezed. Achoo. This sound made him dizzy and his vision blurred. Damn, who's talking about me behind my back? He subconsciously looked at the silver bridge in the sky. Sigh, I wonder how Master and the others are doing now. At this moment, Wu Yao hurried over. Third brother? Sanson rubbed his nose. When he turned around, he saw that Wu Yao's expression was a little strange. He blinked his small eyes. What's wrong? What happened? Why are you in such a hurry? Wu Yao quickly walked to him and said in a low voice. Third brother, there's a problem in the Taoist world. Chapter 2346. When Sanson heard this, he immediately put away the account book. What's going on? Before Master left, he had instructed him to guard the door realm well. Something really happened, he had to solve it quickly. Wu Yao shook his head. It's hard to explain in a few words. Third brother, come with me to take a look. Now that big brother and second brother were not in Peach Blossom Cove, Sanson was the one in charge. Moreover, Sanson was the most familiar with this place. Sanson nodded. Let's go. Let's not delay. The two of them walked straight and soon arrived in front of the door realm. Yujio was holding a wooden sword in his arms and waiting there. When he saw the two of them, he immediately went forward. Third brother, fifth brother. Sanson looked at the barrier and was shocked. The gate realm, which was originally transparent, was now flowing with vibrant colors and resplendent lights. The specks of light gathered together, forming a huge round mirror. On the edge of the mirror, complicated and exquisite patterns could be vaguely seen. They were mysterious and powerful. On the surface of the mirror, a silver light flickered. It was so dazzling that one could not open their eyes and look directly at it. When Sanson saw this scene, he was also stunned on the spot. He stared at the mirror for a long time. This mirror looked extremely heavy and sacred, but it was embedded in a thin layer of the door realm. It looked a little strange. When did this appear? This morning. Wu Yao said, after seeing it, I called you Jio to guard here. I went to look for you, third brother. This matter was obviously not right. He did not dare to be negligent. Sanson took a step forward and immediately felt a strong pressure spreading out from it. It was difficult to get close. Upon closer inspection, the void near the door realm seemed to be affected by the mirror and was slightly distorted. Sanson frowned. Third brother, shouldn't we report this to master as soon as possible? Yu asked. Sanson nodded. Of course I do. He turned back to look at the two of them with a conflicted expression. But, who should we send? Wu Yao and Yu looked at each other. The two of them had been taking turns to guard this door realm. Of course, it was more suitable for them to do this. I'll go. Wu Yao pondered for a moment and said. Speaking of which, this is the first time I've seen such a situation. I'll try my best to explain it to master. Sanson nodded in agreement, but felt a headache coming on. But if you leave, won't Yu be the only one left here? There were many strong martial artists in the Peach Blossom Cove, but their master valued this realm very much. Thus, they tacitly agreed to entrust it to the 13U sect. Presently, Sun Yi and the rest had all followed Chu Luiwei to the illusory god palace, leaving only the few of them to guard the Peach Blossom Cove. It would be difficult to choose a suitable person to guard the gate realm. At this moment, a sound suddenly came from a mountain peak not far away. The three of them looked up at the same time and saw a thin and tall figure standing at the top of the mountain. The surrounding heaven and earth energy was rapidly surging towards him. That's Little 13? Yu asked in surprise. Is he going to break through? That's him. Wu Yao narrowed his eyes. This child has been going out early and coming back late recently. I didn't expect him to break through now. Sanson rubbed his round palms. I remember that Little 13 should have broken through to become a rank 9 warrior, right? TSK, how long has it been since he broke through? Little 13's talent is not to be underestimated. Boom. As he spoke, a majestic aura suddenly spread from Little 13's body. He had officially become a rank 9 warrior. Sanson nodded in satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. I'll pick some good pills for Little 13 to stabilize his realm. Yu glanced at him faintly. It's rare for third brother to be so generous. Usually, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for them to take anything from him. However, third brother was extremely good to Little 13. Sanson snorted. Can you compare to Little 13? This child, whoosh. Before he could finish his sentence, Sanson suddenly realized that the surrounding heaven and earth energy had begun to surge towards Little 13 at an even faster speed. The abundant energy surged like a tide, causing a huge commotion. Wu Yao suddenly realized something and his eyes lit up. Little 13 is going to break through consecutively? Now that he was a rank 9 warrior, he would be an exalted god. Yu took 2 steps forward and realized that it was true. With this momentum, he was definitely going to break through to become an exalted god. Damn, breaking through to become an exalted god from a rank 9 warrior is a qualitative leap. He didn't even prepare at all and just did it directly? Yu-Gi-Oh's face was filled with envy and resentment. I'm jealous. Back then, in order to cross the threshold of becoming an exalted god, he had spent a lot of effort and lost count of how many wooden swords he had used. Now Little 13 just had to stomp his feet. Wu Yao glanced at Sanson. Third brother Little 13 is going to become an exalted god. He's not a child anymore, right? How could there be such a heaven-defying child? Sanson, I'm jealous too. Wu Yao, boom. The sound of thunder rolled out from the clouds. The three of them stood in place and waited patiently, intending to wait for Little 13 to break through before doing anything else. After all, this was not something that could be passed so easily. It was better to see it with their own eyes. However, they soon realized that something was wrong. Chapter 2347. The three of them looked over and saw a silver Tianlei in the sky. It was heading straight for Little 13. Where did this Tianlei come from? Sanson was stunned and subconsciously raised its head to take a look. What the hell? This Tianlei didn't come from the sky, but flew over from an unknown place. Moreover, it appeared too suddenly. Will there be a problem? I think we should go and stop that Tianlei. Yu said as he gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. However, he had just taken half a step when a second Tianlei came. It was also heading for Little 13. At the same time, an inexplicably familiar aura came. Wu Yao narrowed his eyes and raised his hand to stop Yu. Wait. Yu was stunned and looked at him strangely. Wu Yao raised his head. Don't you feel that this movement seems like I've seen it before? Yu blinked. Sanson, however, suddenly thought of something, and a great panic appeared in its small eyes. No way? That little ancestor is here? Chi. Another silver Tianlei suddenly appeared. Wu Yao said calmly. Not just one but 2. Sanson turned around and ran. Wu Yao had already expected this and didn't stop him. He only raised his voice and asked, Third brother, they're already here. Where can you run to? Don't forget that the flowers and plants in Qingshui Cliff still need you. Sanson stopped in his tracks and his face was full of pain. He wanted to run because he felt sorry for those treasures. Yujio saw the reaction of the two and suddenly realized something. His face was full of joy. It's the two of them? Wu Yao laughed. Who else could it be? Yujio said excitedly. Third brother. Then hurry up and get ready. We haven't seen each other for so long. Why don't you give them a greeting gift or something? Sanson wanted to cry but had no tears. So it's not you guys who are bleeding. While the three of them were talking, a few more silver Tianlei appeared one after another. 13 was still in a daze at first, but when the first Tianlei arrived in front of him, he immediately realized something and was pleasantly surprised. Then, without hesitation, he drew the Tianlei into his body and began to refine his divine body. Although Tianlei did not descend from the sky, it still contained an astonishing amount of power. 13's entire body was in intense pain, as if every inch of his flesh, blood and bones were being torn apart. However, he could only grit his teeth and swallow all of it. At the same time, he tried his best to convert all of it into his own strength. Then came the second and the third. Numerous Tianlei surged forth and shone brightly, almost completely enveloping 13's figure. However, the aura on his body continued to rise. Finally, when the last ray of silver light entered his body, he suddenly opened his eyes. A shocking aura burst out from his body. At this point, 13 had finally broken through and entered the high god realm. These two little ancestors were so full of themselves now. However, at this moment, 12th sister looked over. Third brother and the others seemed to be here too. Although there was some distance between them, it would be a lie to say that they couldn't see or hear. Yujio was very happy. Third brother, fifth brother, what are you waiting for? Let's go. It's been so long since we last saw them. After he finished speaking, he took a step forward, tipped his toes and headed straight over. Wu Yao glanced at Sanson and reminded him, Third brother, 11th sister doesn't like people to be late. After saying that, he also followed after her. Sanson took a deep breath and prepared himself mentally for a long time. He stretched out his hand and put on a smile before turning around to follow. Don't be afraid. Maybe these two little ancestors have grown up and won't be as ignorant as before. With that thought, Sanson finally felt more at ease. They were not slow and soon reached the top of the mountain. 11th sister. 12th sister. Yujio laughed. We haven't seen each other for so long. Did you miss 9th brother? No. I did. The two girls spoke in unison. Chapter 2349. Aunt 12 looked at Aunt 11 helplessly. It was rare for her to be so stubborn. She repeated, Yes. My sister and I miss our master, brothers and sisters very much. All right, and 13. She rarely said so many words at once. Although she tried to raise her voice, it was not obvious. It still sounded soft. It was as if she had not eaten her fill. Then Yujio really did ask. Sister 12, you came without eating? Aunt 12 blushed and shrunk behind Aunt 11. After a while, she replied softly, Yes. Aunt 11 said, We were in a hurry. These few words could be considered an explanation. Yujio's heart suddenly ached. How can this be? No matter how anxious you are, you can't not eat your fill. Aunt 11 shook her head. It's nothing. We heard that third brother has a lot of good food here, so we thought that it would be the same if we came here to eat. Sanson, who had just arrived, heard this and suddenly stopped in his tracks. Aunt 11 had already looked over. Third brother were hungry. The flesh on Sanson's face trembled. Under the gaze of several pairs of eyes, he took out 2 bottles of pills with difficulty and handed them over. Is this enough? Aunt 11 took it with both hands and turned her head to pass it to Aunt 12. Use it first. After that, she turned around and looked at Sanson. There was no expression on her cold and indifferent face. But Sanson was too familiar with her expression. He gritted his teeth and took out 2 more bottles. Third brother, both of us are high gods now, Aunt 11 reminded him softly. Sanson's hands trembled and he took more out with tears in his eyes. 1 bottle, another bottle, and another bottle. Aunt 11 did not stop him. It was not until Sanson's hands were almost unable to hold it that he could not help but ask, Still not enough? Aunt 11 took the things, gave some to Aunt 12 and kept some for herself. Aunt 12 opened a bottle and whispered, Sister, these are all doctor-level pills. Aunt 11 raised her eyebrows. Third brother, don't you have doctor-level pills? The corner of Sanson's mouth twitched. How much is this? It's enough for you to eat for a long time. It took a lot of effort to break a king divine artifact. Aunt 11 said confidently, If third brother really can't bear to part with the food, then it's fine. We'll just starve. Anyway, we've already gotten used to it after all these years. Here, here, here. Give it all to me. Xianxia couldn't listen to them anymore. She took out a lot of pills and stuffed them into the hands of the two girls. Lady 12's lips curled into a faint smile. Thank you, third brother. Aunt 11 glanced at Xianxia. Looks like third brother is indeed rich and imposing now. Given his personality, the fact that he could take out so many of them so easily meant that he had an astonishing amount of them. Xianxia's heart sank. Exposed. He rubbed his face with heartache. If it was like this just now, I could have taken out a venerable one divine artifact's power of Tianlei and given it to 13. It's a pity. The corners of Xianxia's eyes twitched. Even Yu could not help but touch her nose. This isn't very good, right? A venerable one divine artifact is quite rare. How inappropriate would it be to destroy it just like that? Aunt 11 thought about it and felt that it made sense. She looked at 13 again. Then you can use it the next time you break through to venerable one. It's the same. 13 did not expect to be arranged as soon as he broke through to venerable one. He was speechless. After struggling for a while, he said, This? Maybe by then, everyone will be able to summon Tianlei normally? The main reason was that the current situation was too strange. Crack. A crisp sound suddenly rang out. Everyone present was shocked. When they looked over, they found that 12th Nyang was holding a sword that had already broken into two pieces. It was the sword that the two of them used when they flew over just now. It was also an Emperor Divine artifact. Aunt 12 obviously did not expect the situation to turn out like this. She stared blankly at the broken sword in her hand, then looked up at the others with a guilty expression. I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to put it away. Everyone was speechless. Aunt 11 was already used to this. She took the broken sword and rolled it into a ball. Then she pulled out a few silver Tianlei from it and absorbed them into her body. Don't waste it. Sister, remember to eat until you're full next time. Sister 12 nodded obediently. I know. Chapter 2350. When she ate too much, she could not control the strength in her hands. She had made this mistake before, so she was usually very careful. However, she had been hungry for too long this time and could not hold it in. Although Aunt 11 had the same physique as her, as the elder sister, she had better self-control. Just as she was about to throw away the thing in her hand, Aunt 11 noticed that the others were looking at her strangely. She paused. This thing can't be thrown away? She glanced down at it. But this is already a pile of scrap metal. There was nothing to be reluctant about, right? Yu swallowed hard. Sister 11, it was an Emperor Divine artifact just a few minutes ago. It was destroyed by you in the blink of an eye. Don't you feel sad at all? Aunt 11 looked at him. Aunt 12 whispered in agreement. Brother 9, this thing really can't be used anymore. What was the point of keeping it? Yu eyes twitched. Of course, he knew that this thing could not be used anymore. Was this the key to the problem? Wu Yao coughed. They're right. Even if it was an Emperor Divine artifact before, now that it can't be used, it's no different from trash. It's good to throw it away. The rest of the people fell silent. Originally, they wanted to ask how the two girls had survived these few years, but now it seemed that there was no need to ask. Even if they really wanted to ask, they should ask the people who met them how they survived. Where's Master? Aunt 11 looked left and right. We've been here for so long, but I don't seem to have sensed Master's aura. Seeing that the two of them seemed to be very uninformed, Wu Yao briefly recounted what had happened before to them. After listening, Aunt 11 was still calm, but Aunt 12 had already widened her eyes and looked at the silver bridge in the sky. Then, if that's the case, Master and the others are there now? Wu Yao nodded. That's right. Also, there's some trouble in the gate realm. We were thinking of reporting to Master. Aunt 11 followed his line of sight. Is this gate realm very important? Wu Yao nodded. That's why we're still discussing who should stay here to guard it with Yu. That's easy. As Aunt 11 spoke, she flipped her hand and took out something. Dong. The heavy object fell to the ground with a dull thud. Xianxia and the others looked carefully and were immediately shocked. What appeared in front of them was an 8-foot-tall bronze man covered in dark gold. This is a puppet? Xianxia's eyes lit up. She stepped forward and pinched the puppet's arm. This is made of the best heavy gold copper. Just a palm-sized piece would be a priceless treasure in the outside world. As for this puppet, it was made entirely out of this material. He knocked. You're still honest? This puppet's battle prowess is comparable to that of a top god. Leave it here and help guard the gate realm. Aunt 11 said. Wu Yao was instantly tempted. This was indeed a good idea. Now that 13 had also become a high god, he was thinking of having 13 and Yujio work together to guard the door realm. The only drawback was that 13's combat power was not on par with Yujio's for the time being. But with this puppet things were different. This thing will indeed be of great help to us. However, why do you have such a treasure in your hands? Wu Yao asked curiously. Aunt 11 said, Big brother gave it to us. Everyone! ! Seeing the shocked expressions on their faces, 12th mother said softly, Back then, Big brother was worried that the two of us would be bullied outside, so he gave this to us. Third brother, don't you have it? She thought everyone had it. Aunt 11 shook her head. Do you even need to ask? If they had this thing, they would not have been worried about the gate realm just now. Yujio looked down at the wooden sword in her hand and was full of resentment. We all follow the same big brother. Why is the difference so big? Wu Yao said, Be content. Your wooden sword was personally carved by Big Brother. I have nothing. Yujio gritted her teeth. You're just a fighter. What do you want? Big Brother's fist? Sanson clutched his chest in pain. Stop talking. All these years, not only did he not take anything from Big Brother, but he had also given him a lot of things. He worked hard for years to earn that little bit of money, but none of it went into his private account. 13 silently took half a step back. Speaking of which, he had learned the most from Big Brother. Naturally, he had no right to interrupt. Wu Yao forced himself to calm down. Then it's settled. As for the two of you, we'll go to the illusory god palace too. Aunt 11 said. Wu Yao choked. Are you sure? Yes. Sanson suddenly realized something and immediately nodded. The illusory god palace is great. There are all kinds of treasures there. Aunt 11 nodded. Yes, that's what we think too. I heard that there's a mountain of herbs there. There should be a lot of pills there. Also, there seem to be a lot of blacksmiths there. Logically speaking, there should be a lot of divine artifacts. Isn't that great? When Wu Yao heard this, he immediately felt that it made sense. Okay. Then let's go together. Illusory God Palace, Treasure Pavilion. Zhao sent Chu Luiwei into the room and left by himself. After he closed the door, he turned around and frowned. Madame said. She wanted to copy all the remaining Shen formations of the mythical flame diagram? Then wouldn't she be able to complete the star path directly? Chapter 2351. He held his breath and looked back again. Even though he couldn't see anything through the door, the waves in his heart couldn't calm down for a long time. It wasn't that he hadn't seen the world, but this was too ridiculous. The mythical flame diagram had been stored in the treasure pavilion for a long time. Some people came to buy it while others were chosen to help copy it. But most of these people were busy with the first volume. As for the second volume, many people couldn't even understand it, let alone the rest. Ming Shu had seen many Shen masters who were determined by their talent, but so far no one had comprehended the entire mythical flame diagram. Of course, Jinyun Lai wasn't one of them, because he had indeed completed the Star Road on his own. As for the others, Qing shook his head, his eyes still filled with disbelief. Looking at Madame's calm and confident look, it seemed like victory was in her hands. He thought about it carefully. In his impression, she did not show the slightest bit of embarrassment because of the mythical flame diagram. The previous few times after she came, she would exchange a few simple greetings before going directly to the second floor and entering the room to copy the Shen formations. She didn't take long. He had seen the replicated ones and they were all perfect. Looking at her, she did seem to be at ease. If she could really copy all the Shen formations this time, then, after leaving this door, she could directly cross the Star Road and enter the illusory God Palace. If this were to happen, she would be the first person to successfully complete the Star Road after Jinyun Lai. Qing was a little excited. Madame's talent and strength seemed to be more amazing than he had expected. He rubbed his hands, suppressed the emotions in his heart, and left. In the room, Chu Luiwei sat quietly by the window. There were two books in front of her. It was the mythical flame diagram. The first volume was closed at the side, and the second volume was opened beside her hand. She glanced at it and began to copy without hesitation. Her movements were smooth and without any hesitation. These Shen formations had already been deeply engraved in her mind. As long as she used her memory, she could easily draw them. She was incomparably clear about every single pattern and every single direction. Previously, due to various reasons, she had not displayed her full strength. Every time he came, he would restrain himself. He would only copy a portion of it and stall for time before leaving. As a matter of fact, she'd taken advantage of this period of time to engrave every single diagram in her heart and comprehend them thoroughly. Now she didn't want to drag it out any longer. She had to enter the illusory shrine as soon as possible. Time passed by slowly. Under Chu Liyue's hands, one profound formation after another was replicated. The further he progressed, the more time he spent, and the more energy and patience he had to expend. However, Chu Liyue's expression remained calm from beginning to end. He was neither anxious nor impatient, and proceeded in an orderly manner. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Mingshu came to Chu Liyue again. He was curious and worried. "I wonder how Madam is doing inside." The profound formation on the mythical flame diagram was extremely complicated, and many people would not be able to decipher even one of them in their entire lives. However, she wanted to comprehend all of it and replicate it. This was a huge project that required a lot of time and energy. It was very quiet inside. During this period of time, Mingshu would actually come to take a look every day and wait outside the door. Other than the sound of books being flipped, he could hardly hear any other sounds. After waiting for a while, seeing that Chu Liyue still did not plan to come out today, he could only shake his head and leave. Fengming Mountain. Tuanzi sat cross-legged, and flames were burning around her silently. The air was scorching hot. From afar, the entire top of Fengming Mountain seemed to be surrounded by scarlet gold flames. When Yu Qian arrived, this was the scene he saw. A hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. As expected of the purest bloodline, whether it was Yi Zhao or Yi Gong, none of them could compare to it. At this rate of cultivation, Tuanzi should be able to open the 8th meridian in no time. Yu Qian was in a good mood. Although he had made quite a few concessions in order to make Dumpling break the contract with Chu Liyue and stay in Fengming Mountain to cultivate. But now it seemed that everything was worth it. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the side. Yu Qian frowned and looked in the direction of the sound. There seemed to be a shadow flashing past. His expression turned stern. "Who is it?" Fengming Mountain was heavily guarded. Other than him and Dumpling, only Chu Liyue could enter and leave freely. However, she also relied on his token to come, so he knew every time. However, the black shadow that flashed by just now had clearly barged in quietly. He moved and quickly chased in that direction. At this moment, Dumpling suddenly opened her eyes. She stood up, frowned, and shouted, "What are you doing?" Yu Qian stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Dumpling. "You don't have to worry about it. Just cultivate in peace." Dumpling glared, "But you're disturbing my cultivation." Yu Qian paused. "I told you not to come over. Leave immediately." Dumpling put her hands on her waist. "But there was something just now. What was it? Why didn't I see it?" Dumpling glared at him fiercely. "Are you leaving or not?" Yu Qian wanted to say something but hesitated. He really didn't want to disturb Dumpling, so he could only give in. "I'll leave. You continue." After he finished speaking, he moved and headed out of Fengming Mountain. Only when she was sure that he had left did Dumpling let out a soft snort. Still not coming out? Digression, as he wrote, he realized that he had inexplicably lost 2,000 words. He went to the system to look for it for a long time before he could find it. Buzz, a crack quickly appeared on the barrier. Success. Dumpling was pleasantly surprised. She quickly entered. Abundant heaven and earth energy instantly surged in from all directions. Dumpling took a deep breath and felt cool all over. Fengming Mountain was good, but it was a little hot. Therefore, when he suddenly came out from the inside, he was still not used to it. Dumpling turned around to take a look. The crack had already quietly closed. The surroundings were also quiet, as if no one had noticed her arrival. Dumpling blinked. This barrier seemed to be very easy to pass through. She put away the ancestor golden feather, and sure enough, she caught the other party's remaining aura in the air. Over there. Dumpling confirmed the direction and quickly rushed over. A sound rang out in the quiet courtyard. Something suddenly drilled into the pile of fallen leaves, raising countless flying leaves. After a moment, an indifferent and quiet voice came from the room. "You sneaked to Fengming Mountain again?" The pile of fallen leaves remained motionless. "Have you forgotten what I warned you before?" There was a hint of coldness in that voice. The courtyard was deathly silent. At this moment, a series of knocks came from outside. Knock knock. "Is anyone there?" A crisp and soft voice came from outside. The conversation in the room abruptly stopped. Outside the door, Dumpling's face revealed a smug and proud smile. "Hee, this is your home, right? I've already found you here. Are you still not willing to come out?" She was very sure that the other party was definitely here, because that was where the smell had disappeared. Originally, she wanted to go in directly, but there was a layer of barrier outside the courtyard. She thought about it and felt that it was not appropriate to force her way in, so she obediently chose to knock on the door. Since he had already chased her here, there was no reason to hide, right? After waiting for a while, it was still quiet inside. There was no response. Dumpling knocked on the door again. Knock, knock, knock. I'm not a bad person, why aren't you coming out? Still no one answered. Dumpling waited for a while longer, a little angry, and pouted. If you don't come out, I'll go in myself. After saying that, she placed her hands on the door and moved her chubby little face closer, wanting to peek through the crack in the door. Unfortunately, although this courtyard was not big, the quality of the courtyard door was excellent. She widened her grape-like eyes and spun them around, but she still couldn't see anything. How can this be? Dumpling muttered softly. She had done him a huge favor. Was she going to leave 2 cinnabar fruits behind just like that? Why are you here? The voice of a woman filled with astonishment came from behind. Dumpling turned her head to look. The person who came was Xu Jing. Dumpling pursed her lips and ignored her. She pressed her face against the door again and secretly exerted force with both hands. Perhaps she could really open the door and go in to take a look. However, her behavior was extremely arrogant and presumptuous in Xu Jing's eyes. What are you doing? Xu Jing frowned. This dumpling not only left Fengming Mountain, but also ran to the first divine envoy's place to behave atrociously? What was she doing, trying to force her way in? Dumpling pretended that she did not hear her. Xu Jing was infuriated. She had come to find the first divine envoy this time to solve the problem of the barrier in Herb Mountain. After the abnormal situation that day, she did not care much and hurried back to the palace of the illusory god. She wanted to ask for help, but she was scolded and ridiculed by the second divine envoy. Helpless, she could only go back and think of a solution herself. In fact, she was also holding back her anger in her heart. After so many years, she still had not been able to solve the problem of the barrier. She was also anxious. That day when she had been slapped by Little 8, she was already angry enough. Now, the second divine envoy's words had completely enraged her. She simply chose to go into seclusion and think of a solution no matter what. However, how could this problem be solved so easily? She had a headache thinking about it day and night, but it still did not work. Helpless, she could only hold on to her last hope and ask the first divine envoy for help. However, she bumped into Dumpling as soon as she arrived. She stepped forward and pulled Dumpling. This is not a place where you can come. Chapter 2353. However, before he could touch Tuanzi, he suddenly felt an invisible pressure coming at him. Xu Jing was shocked and quickly dodged. However, she was still forced to take a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. She hurriedly steadied herself and looked up in bewilderment. Was this the barrier of the first divine envoy? However, Dumpling was clearly standing in front of her, so why wasn't she attacked at all? Dumpling looked back at her again. Her beautiful big eyes blinked a few times and she giggled. It seems that the people inside don't like you very much. Xu Jing was so angry that she almost choked. What nonsense are you talking about? How am I talking nonsense? Dumpling stretched out her hand and gestured. I haven't entered the courtyard yet, but you can't even get close to the door. This was a stark difference between them. Anyone would be able to see that. Xu Jing was angry and her face turned red and white. Actually, she wasn't the one who was strange but Dumpling. Previously, when she and the seventh divine envoy came here, they also couldn't get close to the door. However, when she saw Dumpling leaning on the door and looking inside, she forgot for a moment. Now that she thought about it, it was obvious that Dumpling was too close. What was the first divine envoy thinking? Could it be because of Dumpling's identity? But shouldn't she be at Fengming Mountain now? Thinking of this, Xu Jing's expression changed. How did you get past that barrier? Dumpling glanced at her and muttered softly, It's none of your business. As she spoke, she knocked on the door again. If you don't come out, I'm really going to kick the door down. Xu Jing trembled with fear as she listened. Who was she talking to? The first divine envoy? Impossible. However, there was no one else in this courtyard other than the first divine envoy. At this moment, another person arrived. Dumpling, what are you doing? His voice was low and carried a hint of displeasure. When Xu Jing saw him, she quickly bowed. Greetings, second divine envoy. Yu Qian's eyes swept over her, but he didn't linger on her for long. He only looked at Dumpling. Not long after he left Fengming Mountain, he sensed that Dumpling had also come out. He was shocked and immediately set out to search everywhere. In the end he found this place. Dumpling turned around and looked at Yu Qian with hostility. It's none of your business. His tone was very aggressive. Xu Jing frowned and sneered in his heart. The second divine envoy usually looked gentle, but he wasn't easy to get along with. What he hated the most was when someone contradicted him. Dumpling had spoken so rudely, so she had to be taught a lesson. However, what shocked her was that Yu Qian didn't seem to be angry. He stared at Dumpling for a moment and said, "Didn't we agree before that you would cultivate well in Fengming Mountain? What are you doing now?" Dumpling snorted. "Fengming Mountain is so boring, can't I come out for a walk?" Yu Qian narrowed his eyes. "You came out on your own?" Dumpling's heart skipped a beat. She raised her small face. "Yes. I opened the barrier myself with the ancestor's golden feather." "What's wrong?" Yu Qian paused. "It's not impossible for you to come to the palace of the illusory god." The second divine envoy? Xu Jing was shocked. What kind of place was this? How could Dumpling come and go as she pleased? Looking at her arrogant and despotic appearance, who knew what she would do in the future? Yu Qian gave Xu Jing a warning look. It was not her place to intervene in this kind of matter. Xu Jing felt a chill run down his spine. He quickly lowered his head and swallowed the rest of his words. However, his hands were tightly clenched in his sleeves, and his knuckles turned white. She was the 8th divine envoy and should be high and mighty. But now, anyone could ride on her head and behave atrociously. Yu Qian looked at Dumpling. "However, there are some places you can go and some places you can't. This is the residence of the first divine envoy. You are not allowed to disturb her in the future." His expression remained the same, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Dumpling pursed her lips. She was extremely smart. She knew when to make a fuss and when not to. Just like now, Yu Qian was definitely not joking. She gritted her teeth and snorted softly. "If you don't want to come, then don't. There are plenty of places to play here anyway." After saying that, she walked away with her little legs. Halfway through, she suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at Yu Qian. "Who in the palace of the illusory god has a magical beast?" Yu Qian raised his eyebrows. "Among the divine envoys, only I am responsible for guarding the mythological beast." Dumpling pursed her lips and turned to leave. Yu Qian followed her. "If you are really bored, I can show you around." But he would never allow Tuanzi to run around here by herself. Dumpling was very tired of him. She wished she could never see his annoying face again. But she also knew that if she really wanted to see what the palace of the illusory god was like, she really had to let him follow her. Crunch. She picked up the cinnabar fruit in her arms and took a fierce bite. Seeing that Yu Qian really left with Dumpling, Xu Jing gritted her teeth in hatred. What the hell? She was just a member of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. She was really arrogant. She didn't even put her, the 8th divine envoy, in her eyes. But the second divine envoy thought highly of her. Needless to say, as long as Dumpling didn't make any big mistakes, she would be able to do whatever she wanted here for a long time. Xu Jing was very angry, but she also knew that there was nothing she could do. Dumpling's existence was too important to the palace of the illusory god. Otherwise, the second divine envoy wouldn't spoil her so much. She turned her head to look at the closed door. From beginning to end, the first divine envoy didn't say a word. This was undoubtedly a tacit approval of the second divine envoy's actions. No matter how much she said, it was useless. After calming down the emotions in her heart, she finally remembered her purpose for coming here. First divine envoy, the barrier at the Herb Mountain is starting to have problems again. That's your business. An indifferent and cold voice came from within. I've given you so much time to deal with it. If you still can't solve it, then no one can help you. Xu Jing's face turned pale. But that barrier was... Her voice suddenly stopped. She didn't dare to say what she was going to say next. No one dared to mention what happened back then. It was best to leave it as a blur in the dust of time. That was a taboo in the palace of the illusory god. She clearly knew this. After hesitating for a long time, seeing that the first divine envoy really didn't intend to do anything, she finally gave up and bowed to leave. Xu Jing will take her leave. After leaving, Xu Jing originally wanted to go back to her residence. But halfway there, the fire in her heart burned more and more fiercely. The first divine envoy, the second divine envoy, and the others were all watching with folded arms. Were they really planning to make things difficult for her? Recently, unlucky things had happened one after another, and it almost made her collapse. She couldn't just let everyone step on her head. Thinking of this, she turned around and walked out of the palace of the illusory god. The matter of the barrier at the herb mountain couldn't be solved in a short time. She might as well go and get back at little Hachi first. Chapter 2354. She couldn't afford to offend the two divine envoys, but she could still teach a lowly person without a bloodline totem a lesson. However, before she reached the door, she suddenly noticed something and stopped in her tracks. Then, the void in front of her began to shake. A tall and slender figure slowly appeared. She was stunned at first, but then she recognized the person, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. "Yin, where are you going?" A cold voice sounded. Xu Jing was stunned and said subconsciously, I'm going out. You're not going to the herb mountain." The other party's tone was very certain. Xu Jing felt that something was wrong. Her eyes flashed and she said, "If I'm not going to the herb mountain, where else can I go?" The appearance and figure of the man opposite her were hidden behind the fluctuating void, and she couldn't see him clearly. However, Xu Jing seemed to be able to feel a pair of sharp and cold eyes staring at her. Her whole body tensed up. After a while she heard the other party say, "That's good." Xu Jing frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, during this period of time, you'd better not go anywhere except the illusory god palace and the herb mountain, and don't cause any trouble." Xu Jing's heart skipped a beat. Why did this sound so wrong? What did he mean by don't cause any trouble? He made it sound like she had been causing trouble all this time? Xu Jing felt a little uncomfortable, but she still forced a smile. "I understand." With that, the man turned around and was about to leave. "Wait." Xu Jing hurriedly stopped him. The man half turned around. "Is there anything else?" Xu Jing pursed her lips and asked nervously, "Nothing. It's just that I haven't seen you for a long time and I wanted to ask, how have you been?" After asking this, Xu Jing's face was faintly hot. This question seemed a little abrupt. "I've been very well." Unexpectedly, that person actually gave a reply. Xu Jing was stunned. In the past, he would never say anything more, but this time, Xu Jing was about to continue speaking, but the void vibrated and the man had already left. Looking at the empty void in front of her, Xu Jing felt a little disappointed for a moment. But when she remembered that he had actually answered her question, her heart seemed to overflow with joy. After thinking for a while, Xu Jing gradually calmed the churning thoughts in her heart and began to think about what he had said before. Don't cause any more trouble and can only stay in the herb mountain and the illusory god palace? Did he suddenly come here today to tell her this? Could it be to warn her not to act rash action? Xu Jing. On the one hand, she wanted to find little Eight for revenge and get back the slap she gave him that day. On the other hand, the sudden arrival of this person also confused her. After thinking about it for a while, she finally put away her thoughts and decided to put the matter of little Eight aside. That person must have a deep meaning for suddenly saying all this. No matter how he thought about it, it was better to wait and see how things turned out. The courtyard was silent. Suddenly, an explosion came from one of the rooms. Bang! The sound shocked xuanhuan so much that she pushed the door open and ran out. "What's wrong? What are you doing?" Smelling the burnt smell, he shouted at once, Little Hachi, did you do something again?" Hearing xuanhuan's voice, little Hachi, who had just run out of the house, felt wronged. "Second brother. I've been busy in my room. Which eye of yours saw me do something?" She held the door and stepped on her shoes carelessly. Her hands were stained with red. Little Hachi was also very angry. She was painting her nails when there was a sudden explosion. She was so shocked that her hands trembled. The bottle of flower dew that she had painstakingly prepared spilled just like that. Who could she reason with? Xuanhuan covered her face. "If it's not you, then who is it?" Cough, 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 it's me. A door at the side suddenly opened and thick black smoke floated out. A wretched figure ran out while coughing. Little Hachi's beautiful eyes were overflowing with killing intent. "Jian Feng, to compensate me for the flower dew." Jian Fengqi finally came to the yard with much difficulty and sat down on the stone bench before he could catch his breath. Wait for me to recover?" Xuanhuan glanced at him. "Jian Fengqi, are you refining pills or setting a fire? The house is about to be set on fire." Jian Fengqi's face was streaked with black and gray. His usual suave and handsome appearance was completely gone. Cough, I was in a hurry when I was refining pills. I was about to succeed. Almost, just a little bit. Next time it will definitely succeed." "Next time?" Little Hachi gritted her teeth in anger. When Yanqing returned, he saw this scene. He quickly glanced around and understood what had happened. When his gaze fell on little Hachi, he frowned slightly. Little Hachi was worried that she couldn't make a move in her current state, but when she saw Yanqing, she immediately perked up. Brother Yanqing, hurry up and drag Jian Fengqi out. You're not allowed to come back until you successfully refine pills at the level of a senior doctor. Jian Fengqi knew something was wrong and immediately turned to Yanqing. Brother Yanqing, don't listen to her. Yanqing stopped in his tracks. Little Hachi widened her eyes. Jian Fengqi, you're shameless. Jian Fengqi said proudly, it's just calling me brother, I know how to do it too. Bah. Little Hachi bent down angrily to pick up the shoe and threw it at him. Although Jian Fengqi failed to refine pills, he still had the ability to react. He immediately lay back and dodged the shoe. Then the shoe flew toward Yanqing. Smack. A sound was heard. Yanqing raised his hand and caught the shoe expressionlessly. The courtyard fell into a dead silence. Chapter 2356. Mingshu was shocked and didn't know what to say. After a while he stammered, But you've just finished these and need to rest. Even if she wanted to go to the Star Road, it would be better to rest first, right? Chu Liyue's smile deepened. That's not necessary. It's just right to go now. On one hand, she had just copied all the Shen formations and mastered them. She was in her best state. On the other hand, she didn't know why, but she didn't feel tired after looking at the last Shen formation. Instead, she felt more energetic. At first, she didn't want to go directly, but now it seemed that the situation was progressing more smoothly than expected. Then it wasn't a bad idea to strike while the iron was hot. Seeing that Chu Liyue had made up her mind, Mingshu couldn't persuade her anymore. Wait a moment, I'll go with you. As he spoke, he hurriedly returned the box to the room and followed her out. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. Lord Mingshu, you don't have to go through so much trouble, Mingshu explained. Madam, since you can copy all the Shen formations here, then you should be able to finish the Star Road this time. You have to know that no one has done it since the 7th Divine Envoy. Of course he wanted to witness it with his own eyes. Moreover, this was Madam. Chu Liyue thought about it and agreed. Not only Mingshu, but everyone in the Illusory God Palace would probably come after hearing the news, as long as she could finish the Star Road. She nodded. Lord Mingshu, please? When Chu Liyue and Mingshu arrived at the Star Road, there weren't many people here. It was very deserted. Mingshu explained, since Mu Yafeng was found to have cheated, everyone has been more cautious. Chu Liyue nodded. She came to the place where she stopped last time and looked forward. The Star Road was long and flickering. The remaining Shen formations were the most complicated ones in the entire Star Road. But to her, it was something that had been deeply engraved in her mind. She held her breath and raised her finger gently. In the next moment, several streams of light flew out from her fingertips and intertwined in the air. So fast. Mingshu was shocked. This was a great Grandmaster Shen formation. Yet she was able to execute it so easily and smoothly. No wonder she could complete the entire mythical flame diagram in such a short period of time. She should have already memorized every single Shen formation on it, right? Soon, a stream of light flew up and suddenly bloomed above her head. Bang! The sound instantly spread far and wide. Without any hesitation, Chu Liyue continued to move forward and started to set up the second Shen formation. At the same time, many people in the Illusory God Palace noticed the commotion. Is someone walking on the star path? Who is it? Why now of all times? Great Grandmaster Shen formation. Bang! Many people had yet to react when they saw the second Shen formation blossoming in midair. This time, everyone became excited. This speed is even faster than Mu Yafeng's. Don't mention Mu Yafeng. She cheated. That's why I'm so shocked. In this Illusory God Palace, who is more talented than Mu Yafeng? Wait, why does the person I'm knocking on look familiar? It looks like Xuanhuan. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone knew that Chu Liyue's performance on the star path was indeed more outstanding than Mu Yafeng's. But the current situation was a little exaggerated. I remember that she stopped after entering the Great Grandmaster realm. Why is she starting again now? So fast? Could it be that she used some method like Mu Yafeng? Hiss. That's not possible, right? Mu Yafeng and the 7th Divine Envoy were just punished because of this. How could she go against the rules and commit a crime? Besides, there shouldn't be anyone who can help her, right? Let's go take a look. Xiaoran also heard the commotion and ran over without thinking. On the way, Chu Luiyue actually broke 2 more Shen formations in succession. When they arrived, there were already many people gathered here. Everyone's gaze was focused on Chu Luiyue. Bang! Another Shen formation soared into the sky, shining brilliantly. The crowd who had rushed over fell into silence and could only stare blankly. Everything that was happening in front of them was far beyond their imagination, so much so that they didn't even know what to say. Chu Luiyue turned a blind eye to all of this. Her expression was calm and persistent. Under her feet, the Shen formations lit up one after another, reflecting a dazzling light in her eyes. Looking from afar on the star path, light flickered. And the woman in red, as if she was stepping on the river of stars, moved forward. At the heavenly gate, Wu Yao brought the 2 girls to the place. Standing in front of the gate, Wu Yao looked at the heavenly gate and frowned. Aunt 11 and Xiaoran looked at each other. "Fifth brother, is there a problem with the heavenly gate?" Wu Yao touched his chin and nodded thoughtfully. "I think there is." Aunt 12 asked softly, "Fifth brother, what's the problem?" Wu Yao said seriously, "This heavenly gate seems to have not been cleaned for a long time." The 2 of them, what kind of problem was this? Wu Yao clasped his hands. He didn't know why, but he just felt that something was wrong with this gate. "Look, the angle of this gate is wrong." Aunt 11 was silent for a moment. "Fifth brother, if you don't go in, we'll leave first." Wu Yao coughed and hurriedly said, Don't. Let's go together. This is not something to be proud of. Originally, he wanted to ridicule him a little, but now that the other party had put it this way, he really couldn't spit out half a word. The hand holding the ancestor's golden feather gradually tightened. Name: Aunt 11. 12 Nyang. Chiao Tong quickly wrote down the names of the 2 people on the booklet, then took out 3 dumplings and handed them over. "This is dumplings." Aunt 11 didn't wait for him to finish. She raised her hand and took the items over. "I've heard of them before." She kept one for herself and tied it around her waist. Then she handed one to Wu Yao and tied the last one for 12 Nyang. After that, she looked at Chiao Tong. "Now can we go in?" Chiao Tong was speechless. The other party was so fierce that he was momentarily stunned. Aunt 11 said impatiently, "We're in a hurry." This sentence reminded Chiao Tong. He glanced at them suspiciously. "You guys are from Xuanhuan?" Wu Yao laughed. "You're really good, 11th Divine Envoy. You guessed it?" Chiao Tong gritted his teeth. Was there a need to guess? They also didn't have a bloodline totem and were equally arrogant. There was really only one of them, no one else. "Let's go in." He closed the booklet and didn't want to talk to them anymore. He turned around and left. Wu Yao winked at the 2 girls and quickly followed after him. "Hey, 11th Divine Envoy, can I trouble you to ask where our master is now?" Chiao Tong's expression turned colder. He didn't even turn around. "Can't you see for yourselves?" "How can we see?" Wu Yao was talking when he suddenly heard a sound in front of him. Bang! He subconsciously looked up and saw a profound formation slowly blossoming in midair. Master is just in front." As Aunt 11 spoke, she pulled Aunt 12 and walked forward. It seemed like they came at the right time. Wu Yao was about to follow when he suddenly remembered something. He looked back at the divine gate and frowned. The heavenly gate was indeed very awkward to look at. "Fifth brother, what are you looking at?" Seeing that Wu Yao did not follow, 12th Nyang looked back and raised her voice to shout. Of course, her voice was still very soft. Wu Yao looked away. "They're coming." The 3 of them walked forward along the star path. Many people had already gathered on both sides of the star path. At first glance it was crowded. But it was very quiet. Everyone seemed to have a tacit understanding. They kept silent and only stared at the figure on the star path, as if they were afraid of disturbing something. Wu Yao walked forward with the 2 girls. Because the 3 of them looked very unfamiliar, people gradually began to notice them. Chu Luiyue suddenly noticed something and looked back. When she saw the 2 faces that she hadn't seen for a long time, she was delighted. 11-12. Why are you here suddenly? Come here. Everyone heard and understood. So they knew each other. Aunt 11 pulled 12 Nyang forward and stood beside Chu Luiyue. Master. The 2 girls' faces were filled with longing and joy. Aunt 11 smiled, but 12 Nyang's eyes were already filled with tears. Master, my sister and I missed you so much. Chu Luiyue looked at the 2 and felt very emotional. These 2 girls were only a little older than little 13. When the incident happened, they were only 14 years old. In the blink of an eye, they became slim and graceful girls. Wu Yao also came over. Master. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. Wu Yao, why are you? Wasn't he guarding the gate realm in Peach Blossom Cove? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and she frowned slightly. Could it be that there? Wu Yao met her gaze and nodded imperceptibly. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and said, Wu Yao, take the two of them and wait. I'll be done here soon. Wu Yao responded. Yes. However, the onlookers all revealed looks of shock. Almost done? What did that mean? Chapter 2358. Was she planning to stop after a while or, bang? Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and quickly drew another Xian formation. As another ray of light bloomed on top of her head, she lifted her feet and continued forward. Aunt 11 looked towards the end of the star path and narrowed her eyes. Master had made up his mind to go there this time? Suddenly 12 Nyang gently tugged on her sleeve. Aunt 12 turned around. Sister? Aunt 12 still had tears in her eyes and her nose and eyes were red. She leaned forward and whispered, Sister, is that the palace of the illusory god? Aunt 11 nodded, it must be. Aunt 12 pursed her lips. A dark light flashed in Aunt 11's eyes. Do you want to go in and take a look? Aunt 12 gently nodded and blushed as if she was embarrassed. I think I was thinking too much. On the way, she had heard from Fifth Brother that the palace of the illusory god was very powerful and not everyone could enter. Even her master had not been able to enter, let alone her. Aunt 11 said, I wanted to. Aunt 12 was stunned and did not speak. The two of them were twins. Although their personalities were different, they always had the same mind. Just like now, even if they did not speak, they knew what the other was thinking. They both wanted to enter the palace of the illusory god and take a look. Aunt 11 frowned and felt a little strange, because this idea came out of nowhere. But, when Master finished walking the star path, he could enter. Maybe they could find a chance later. Right at this moment, an extremely joyful voice suddenly sounded. Sister 11. Sister 12. The voice was soft and sweet. Even if they did not see the person, just hearing the voice made many people's hearts melt. Many people looked in the direction of the voice and saw a delicate and graceful figure coming towards them. As she walked, the colorful clouds danced and the broken jade tinkled. She was really beautiful. It was little Hachi. She was very fast and in the blink of an eye she was in front of Aunt 11. Oh, look at how beautiful my two sisters have become after not seeing them for a few years. Little Hachi's eyes lit up. She reached out and pinched the two girls' cheeks. I, Sister 8, missed you so much. Lady 12 blushed. Sister 8, we miss you too. It was rare for Aunt 11 to nod her head. How is Sister 8? Little Hachi smiled and rolled her eyes. When has Sister 8 ever had a bad life? Even in this illusory god palace, she was still very happy and carefree. Especially after she had slapped the 8th divine emissary Shu Jing a few days ago, her mood had become even better. Are you hungry? Sister 8 specially prepared a lot of delicious food for you guys. Aunt 11 said, Thank you, Sister 8. We had already eaten our fill at Third Brother's place before we came. Little Hachi clicked her tongue and shed tears of sympathy for Sanson. Based on his stinginess, wouldn't his heart and liver be in pain if these two girls went there? She touched their hair. Don't worry, there are countless treasures on the herb mountain here. Eat as much as you want. Lady 12 quickly waved her hand with a red face. Sister 8, this won't do. I said before that I can only eat until I'm 80 to 90% full. I can't eat as I please. If she really did that, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to control her strength. Little Hachi scratched her nose. Don't worry, with Sister 8 here, I can do whatever I want. Just as she finished speaking, another sound came from the front. Bang. Another Xian formation was successfully cast by Chu Luiyue. Little Hachi looked up with bright eyes. Master, are you planning to finish the star path? Seeing this, the surrounding people couldn't help but whisper. Isn't this speed too fast? The next one will be a Grandmaster Xian formation that starts with the word, heaven. Comparisons are odious. Even if he's cheating, he can't cast so many Xian formations in succession so smoothly, right? Looking at this formation, he's really planning to comprehend all the Xian formations and enter the illusory god palace? Look, the 5th divine envoy is here. The voice in the crowd instantly startled everyone, and they all turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. A young man in black who looked to be 27 or 28 years old was walking out of the illusory god palace. His figure was tall and straight and he was imposing without being angry. It was the 5th divine envoy, Ruan Jianfeng. In fact, he already knew about the movements on the Star Road. He just thought that Chu Luiyue would stop after walking for a while, so he didn't come. After all, he wasn't a Xian master like the seventh divine envoy. The first divine envoy had temporarily handed the Star Road to him, so he was only responsible for the Star Road to prevent any accidents. As for the others, he didn't know much, so he naturally couldn't interfere too much. But seeing that Chu Luiyue kept moving forward without any intention of stopping, he finally realized that something was wrong and finally moved. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes slightly and glanced at him. Seeing that he didn't seem to have any intention of continuing, she quickly retracted her gaze. The fifth divine envoy's sudden appearance was obviously just to see if she could complete the Star Road. Then, just let him watch. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and looked at the Xian formation in front of her. Heaven illumination illusory formation, she muttered softly. She had a deep impression of this Xian formation, because when she first came to the illusory god palace, she happened to encounter Mu Yafeng comprehending this Xian formation. More importantly, this was also the first Xian formation on the Heaven Scroll. Looking at the extremely familiar patterns, Chu Luiyue's emotions surged as countless memories surfaced one after another. Back then she didn't know that this was the so-called Great Grandmaster Xian formation. She only knew that Debao asked her to memorize it. For this Heaven Illumination illusory formation she was in the Red Moon Desert, under the scorching sun, drawing it on the sand over and over again. Even she couldn't remember how many times she tried before she finally memorized it. Now that she thought about it, all that was left in her memory was the wind that carried the coarse sand, the warmth that swept across her face and body. And when she finally succeeded in writing it down, Debao's rare sentence, "Very good." He almost never praised her. He was always extremely picky and strict. Therefore she remembered those two words for a very long time. For a very long time, she only knew that she was learning from Debao, but she didn't even know what she was learning. Until many years later, when she had even experienced life and death, she finally understood that he had been planning for this day since then. Chu Luiyue lightly exhaled, and several rays of light flew out from her fingers. Every ray of light seemed to know their position clearly. They quickly gathered together and outlined the shape of a Xian formation. Before the crowd could even see it clearly, they only saw a flash of light in front of her. Then an indescribable pressure descended, bang. Heaven illumination illusory formation, break. Chapter 2359. All the noise disappeared in an instant. The surrounding space seemed to have solidified and everyone's expression froze. Everything was like a frozen picture. Only little Hachi and a few others were happy. Master is so powerful. Aunt 11 turned her head and said seriously, "It seems that Master will be able to bring us to the illusory god palace soon." Aunt 12 was very happy. Her lips curled into a sweet smile as she said softly, "Yes." Although their voices were not loud, the people around them could still hear them. Xiaoran's neck stiffened as he looked at them with a complicated expression. A few seconds ago he might have laughed at these two girls for speaking nonsense, but now, he actually felt that it was not impossible. He had stayed in the illusory god palace for too long and had seen many geniuses. There were also many who had tried to complete the Star Road. But none of them had succeeded. At first, he thought that Mu Yafeng had suddenly become enlightened and had a chance to succeed. But in the end it turned out that she had cheated. Not only did she lose, but she also implicated the seventh divine envoy. She was quite powerful. But Chu Luiyue's current state was obviously different from Mu Yafeng. These Xian formations she did not hesitate at all. With just a glance she was able to solve them smoothly and smoothly. It was as if she had a card up her sleeve. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something and walked a few steps to the side to stand beside Jue. "Master Jue." Mingshu was concentrating on watching Chu Luiyue solve the Xian formation. When he heard this he suddenly quivered. Xiaoran? What's wrong?" Xiaoran lowered his voice and asked. "Nothing, I just have something to ask Master Mingshu." He raised his chin. "I saw that Master Mingshu accompanied you here before? Did you just come out of Zhenbao Pavilion?" He knew that Chu Luiyue had been in Zhenbao Pavilion recently. Mingshu nodded, "Yes." Then, Xiaoran thought for a while and asked, "That Xian formation, how's her copying?" Seeing that this Heaven Illumination illusory formation could not trap her, it was obvious that she had solved it before. If he guessed correctly, Chu Luiyue might have already copied the corresponding profound formation. Mingshu's expression became a little strange. The entire mythical flame diagram had been copied. What could he say? Seeing Jue's expression, Xiaoran was at a loss. Although this matter should not be publicized at this time, there was nothing that could not be said, right? Furthermore, everyone knew that he, Xiaoran, was only left with the last profound formation that he had yet to decipher. This matter would not affect his interest. Ming Shu hesitated for a long time before he finally said, "Just watch." Xiaoran blinked, then suddenly realized something. What he meant by that, the profound formations that Chu Liwei had deciphered had all been copied. Jin Yunlai's lips moved, but she still swallowed her words. At this point there was no point in saying these things. However, even if she can finish walking the star path and break through every profound formation, she still can't enter the illusory god palace. Yu Qin stood with his hands behind his back and said lightly. Dumpling looked up and glared at him. Yu Qin laughed, but there was no smile in his eyes. People without a bloodline totem will eventually be stopped outside. This was different from those refining saints. Even if the refining saints themselves did not have a bloodline totem, if they could refine a sacred weapon, it meant that they had taken an aura from the chaos divine jade. Relying on that aura they could also enter the illusory god palace. Suli was like that. But for Chu Liwei to enter as a Xian master, it was impossible. Time passed slowly. Chu Liwei walked forward step by step. At this point, the remaining profound formations on the star path all started with the word heaven. In the eyes of others, this part was the most complicated and difficult. But to Chu Liwei, it was just displaying the profound formations imprinted in the depths of her mind. Her divine power reserves were extremely abundant, especially after she had found the third zither score. And the most important thing was that after she started to display the heaven profound formation, not only did her mental power and strength not suffer a huge loss, but it seemed to be constantly improving. In the beginning she didn't really realize this, but as she unleashed more and more profound formations, everything gradually became clear. The surrounding people looked at this scene and were all speechless. Many people felt bitter in their mouths. When they looked at each other, they could only see the deep powerlessness and despair in each other's eyes. When someone was just a little bit better than you, you might be envious and jealous, but when this person was much better than you would not even have the thought of comparing. Now they felt this way towards Chu Liwei. It was an indisputable fact that she could finish walking the star path. Rays of light shot into the sky and bloomed in midair. Chu Liwei walked forward step by step. After an unknown period of time she finally reached the end of the star path. She stopped and looked forward. In front of her there was one last profound formation. If she continued forward, it would be the gate of the illusory god palace. And Ruan Jianfeng was standing there. He stared at Chu Liwei with a sharp gaze as if he wanted to see through her. Unfortunately, the woman in front of him was beautiful and smiling. Her eyes were deep and calm like the starry night, and it was impossible to see any emotion in them. "You do have some ability," he said. Even though he was not a Xian master, he knew how difficult it was to finish this star path. Chapter 2361. Chu Liwei sat cross-legged, held her breath and raised her palm. Her slender and fair fingertips seemed to dance lightly, and a stream of light instantly flew out. In the next moment, the stream of light transformed into a huge ring in front of her. From afar it was dazzling. She's actually going to start from the outline of the Xian formation? The more complicated the Xian formation, the more it should start from the middle, right? That Xian formation is so complicated. She should first fix the framework, then draw the outline bit by bit. If there's even the slightest mistake, she will lose everything. I really don't know what she's thinking. Because of Chu Liu's actions, many people fell into shock and confusion. Xiaoran also furrowed his brows. If she did this, wouldn't it be even more troublesome? Chu Liwei ignored them. With a light wave of her other hand, several streams of light flew out and entered the ring. She didn't stop moving and the outline of the void was quickly filled up. Throughout the entire process she didn't pause at all, as if she had already memorized every detail of the Xian formation. In fact, it was indeed so. As Xiaoran watched, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His gaze focused, and he began to carefully observe every movement of Chu Liu's hands. This seemed different from what he had understood before. His heart suddenly started beating faster. If Chu Liwei was right, then he seemed to know why he was trapped in the last Xian formation for so long. Thinking of this, Xiaoran unconsciously walked forward. Jia quickly pulled him back. "Hey Xiaoran, you can't go any further." The position they were standing at was already the closest to the front. If they wanted to continue forward, they had to walk the star road. Xiaoran stopped in his tracks, but his gaze still didn't move away from Chu Liwei. To be precise, it was the Xian formation in front of her. Jia looked at him strangely. Xiaoran, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Xiaoran muttered, his eyes shining. I might have to follow this girl into the illusory god palace. Jia? So sudden? He couldn't enter for tens of thousands of years, but now, he suddenly thought of something and quickly turned to look at Chu Luiyue. Could it be? Xiaoran learned something from Chu Luiyue? She's breaking the last Xian formation. In the illusory god palace, Jinyun Lai spoke softly with a complicated expression. Yu Qian was expressionless. In his opinion, even if Chu Luiyue, she still wouldn't be able to enter the illusory god palace. So what was there to be concerned? Jin Yunlai knew what he was thinking and sighed to himself. At first he thought he was, but now he was. He had never seen anyone who could break through all the Shen formations in such a short period of time. And was of it. Just now he felt that something was wrong. Now he was even more certain that Chu Luiyue's situation was different from the others. Previously, after Mu Yafeng broke 7 Grandmaster Shen formations in a row on the Star Passage, she stopped because of the huge consumption of strength and spirit. She rested on the spot for a while before continuing. But later on he could clearly feel her exhaustion and her lack of strength. Even though he had taught her a lot at that time, it was still the same. But Chu Luiyue, she seemed to be like a fish in water on this Star Passage. He had never seen such a person. Therefore, no one could say for sure what unexpected things would happen next. The Xian formation in front of Chu Luiyue was filled up bit by bit. Countless lines intertwined and were very delicate, but she didn't make any mistakes. Every step was precise. Even Mingshu, who had long known that Chu Luiyue had finished copying the mythical flame diagram, was so shocked that he was speechless. Because the mythical flame diagram didn't have this last Xian formation. But looking at her, it was as if she had already drawn it thousands of times. Xiaoran's eyes lit up. In his mind, it was as if a door that had been closed for a long time was suddenly opened. Following Chu Luiyue's movements, he also carried out the same simulation in his mind. Although it wasn't as smooth as Chu Luiyue's, it still went smoothly in the end. Xiaoran's blood seemed to be boiling. No one had been trapped by this Shen formation for a longer time than him, so he could react faster than the others to what Chu Luiyue was doing. Sure enough, his method of breaking this Shen formation was wrong from the beginning. If he chose the wrong direction from the beginning, how could he reach the destination? The waiting time seemed to be especially unbearable. But to Chu Luiyue, everything seemed to pass in a flash. She ignored everything around her. Only this Xian formation was left in her eyes. The pattern was gradually drawn, delicate and accurate. Chu Luiyue seemed to have entered a subtle state. She didn't even need to look. With a raise of her hand, those flowing lights would automatically go to their original positions. No one would believe that this Xian formation was the easiest one for her. Everything was as natural as nature itself. Finally, at a certain moment, Chu Luiyue's hand touched the center. Buzz. In an instant, the Xian formation shone brightly. Countless Xian formations lit up in succession on the entire Star Passage. It was like a galaxy in the dark night, incomparably bright. What was going on? Not only did Madame decipher all the Xian formations on the Star Passage, she even enlightened Xiaoran? His expression became even more subtle. At this moment, he finally realized that the Madame's strength seemed to be even more shocking than he had expected. Gradually, the onlookers also came back to their senses. They looked at Chu Luiyue with very complicated expressions. Shock, disbelief, envy, admiration. At this point, any words would be pale and powerless. Anything they said would seem sour and useless. She had completed the Star Passage with her own strength. There was nothing they could do about it. At this moment, the doubts and ridicule they had for her before had become a loud slap to their own faces. It was a burning pain. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and looked at the Xian formation that was rotating silently in front of her. She gently exhaled. Finally, she didn't let him down. Wang Jianfeng frowned. He thought that Chu Luiyue would be trapped in the final Xian formation. Even if she could break it, it would take several years. Who knew? All of this was indeed outside of his expectations. Fifth Divine Envoy. Chu Luiyue tilted her head, and her lips curved up slightly. Now, can I enter the illusory god palace? Wang Jianfeng paused and nodded. As long as you can open the door of the illusory god palace, it will be considered a success. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. It seemed that the door wasn't that easy to open. She lowered her eyes and glanced at Tuan Xnz tied to her waist, then her lips curved into a smile. Okay. After saying that, she took a step forward. In an instant, the Xian formation floating in the air turned into countless streams of light and entered the star passage. Chu Liwei came to the door, raised her head slightly and looked over. Coincidentally, she had seen this door before. Although it was just an illusion at that time, it had left a deep impression on her. At this moment, standing in front of the real thing, the familiar and strange feeling came again. Everything was so real. Even the marks on the door that had been eroded by the wind and frost of time, and the heavy and vast pressure, it was right in front of her eyes and within reach. Chu Liwei reached out her hand. Her slender and soft palm gently placed on the door. Buzz. Almost at the instant her hand touched the door, a buzzing sound suddenly rang out. The hearts of the onlookers hung in the air. Those without a bloodline totem would encounter obstacles when trying to enter the illusory god palace. It seemed that Chu Liwei was also the same. A pattern suddenly appeared under Chu Liwei's palm. Chu Liwei looked at it. There seemed to be a pattern that gradually appeared on the door. Ayu is coming in. Seeing that the last Xian formation was successfully broken, Dumpling jumped up with joy and excitement. Yu Qian frowned. Jianhuan's hand slowly clenched. At this moment, everyone in the illusory god palace heard the noise and looked towards the door. Nan Jinshu hurriedly walked out and happened to meet Su Li at the corner. Nan family head, what a coincidence. Su Li smiled warmly and gently. You also know that little Yu just finished walking the star passage and is coming in, right? Nan Jinshu choked. Actually, he already knew what was happening outside. At first, he didn't take it to heart, but as Chu Liwei broke more and more Xian formations, he gradually panicked. Until just now, when Chu Liwei successfully executed the last Xian formation, he finally couldn't sit still anymore. Thus, he hurriedly came out and wanted to check it out. Who knew that he would run into Su Li? He forced a smile and said, Mr. Su, you're joking. She's not a weapon refining saint and doesn't have a bloodline totem, so she can't come in. I just feel that it's a pity. Is that so? Su Li laughed and tilted her head towards the door. Then I'm afraid that Nan family head will be disappointed. What? Nan Jinshu was stunned. Su Li raised her chin. The door is open. Chapter 2363. Nan Jinshu turned his head instinctively. He could see the situation at the door from where he was standing. Yu Qian and Jianhuan were standing in front of the Chaos Holy Jade looking at the door. Dumpling was there too. If it weren't for the two of them watching, she would have already rushed over to him. Creak, the sound of the door turning could be heard clearly. The door to the Illusion God Palace was pushed open a crack. Nan Jinshu's eyes widened in shock. At this moment, a gust of wind blew. Woo woo, an indescribable pressure came from all directions, completely enveloping Chu Liwei as if it was going to crush her into pieces. A gust of wind swept over, lifting her fine black hair and making the corners of her dress dance. A few strands of hair covered her eyes. Sensing the biting cold aura that rushed out from the crack in the door, many people looked at each other in dismay. As expected, it was extremely difficult for someone without a bloodline totem to completely open the door. Some people were already shaking their heads. With this situation, Chu Liwei probably couldn't get in. Inside the door, the crack didn't expand. Everything seemed to have stopped. Nan Jinshu's emotions were in turmoil. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty. His mouth was dry, but in the end he forced a sneer. I don't think so. The door is open, but she has to be able to get in first. Based on the current situation, being able to open the door a crack was already her limit. Su Li's lips curved without a smile. She didn't reply and walked towards the door. Dumpling turned around when she heard the sound. She ran over immediately when she saw Su Li. Mr. Su. Su Li smiled and bent down to pick her up. Mr. Su, you're also here to wait for Ayu, right? Dumpling asked. Su Li smiled gently. Yes. Yu Qian's gaze paused on Su Li for a moment before he looked away. His lips curved into a cold smile. These people seemed to have almost blind confidence in Chu Liwei. He had to admit that for Chu Liwei to be able to complete the Star Road in such a short time, he did have some ability. But what kind of place was the illusory shrine? She wanted to come in, but that was just a fool's dream. Of course, Su Li could see Yu Qian's disdain. But she didn't care. She just smiled and looked at the door quietly with Dumpling in her arms. Chu Liwei had said that she wanted to enter the illusory god palace. Then today, she would definitely be able to enter. If she wanted to do something, then she would definitely succeed. The biting cold pressure came with the wind, and the flesh, tendons, and bones all over his body felt like they were about to be torn apart. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Chu Liyue's hands trembled slightly. The tongue tied to his waist also swayed in the wind. No one noticed that the words on it had already become incomparably thick without a sound. Chu Liyue closed his eyes. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded from within her body. Clang. The sound of the zither was bleak, but it contained a powerful aura that pressed forward courageously, sweeping across. At this moment, the pressure that had enveloped her vanished with a loud rumble. She didn't hesitate and suddenly pushed. Bang! The door of the illusory shrine opened. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged. Yu Qian suddenly realized that something was wrong and quickly turned around to take a look. The scene in front of him made his heart sink fiercely. Above the chaos holy jade, sparkling radiance gathered. The scarlet gold flames burning on the top of the surrounding white jade pillars suddenly shook violently. They were like candles in the wind, on the verge of collapse. How could this be? He seemed to have suddenly thought of something and looked in the direction of the door again. At the open door, a slender and exquisite figure was standing quietly. Her shoulders and back were extremely straight, like a pine tree in the wind, outstanding and unyielding. On her incomparably beautiful face, the pair of eyes that were as deep as the abyss and as bright as the night sky were shining with a bright light. Behind her, the thousands of lights on the star road flickered and bloomed passionately, but they were not as dazzling as her. Meeting those eyes, for a moment, Yu Qian's heart suddenly gave birth to an extremely strange feeling. It wasn't the first time he saw Chu Liyue, but it seemed to be the first time he saw her like this. Cold, arrogant, lonely, indifferent, noble and high above everyone else. She seemed to be looking over here but also seemed to be looking through all of this, into the vast and boundless distance. Yu Qian opened his mouth wanting to say something, but found that at this moment he couldn't utter a single word. Then he saw the woman take a step forward, and officially stepped into the illusory shrine. Lightning pool. Under the frozen lightning pool, countless silver and golden tianlei seemed to be frozen, motionless in place. At a certain moment, the wind suddenly rose and a golden tianlei slowly swam up. Pull one to move the whole body. The heavenly lightning in the surroundings also began to stir. Seeing this, Xijing, who was standing on the shore, suddenly showed some surprise. Logically speaking, the tianlei here shouldn't have recovered yet, right? Then he suddenly realized something, and turned his head to look in the direction of the illusory shrine. Could it be, Qi? More and more tianlei began to stir. From afar it looked like a dusty chess game that had been sealed for a long time. Suddenly, someone took the chess piece and wanted to change the situation. Whoosh! A figure suddenly flew out from the depths of the lightning pool. It was the fourth divine emissary in charge of guarding here, Mu Dongyu. He was originally peacefully guarding the lightning pool, but when he heard the commotion he immediately moved. He stood in the air and looked down. When he saw the tianlei begin to stir, he immediately frowned. This movement seemed to be unusual. Seeing Mu Dongyu come, Xijing slowly tightened his grip on the hammer in his hand. Crackle. A few streaks of light flashed past his hammer, making subtle noises. Then, the tianlei that were about to stir quietly quieted down. It was as if an invisible hand had tipped down and covered all the waves. All of these changes happened in the blink of an eye. Just as Mu Dongyu was hesitating whether to report to the illusory shrine, he found that the movement below had disappeared. He frowned and then looked at Xijing, who was standing on the shore. Chapter 2364. Almost at the same time that he looked over, Xijing also looked over. There was quite a distance between the two, but they could still see each other's expressions. Xijing grinned. Fourth emissary, why are you looking at me like that? Mu Dongyu stared at him for a long time before retracting her gaze. But he was just a god. He thought too much. Worried that something else would happen here, Mu Dongyu didn't leave. Xijing shrugged, weighed the thunder hammer in his hand and suddenly smiled. The main hall of the palace of the illusory god. Jun Jiuqing knelt in the middle with his eyes closed. His body was covered in a layer of red light, and his aura kept rising. At a certain moment, the buzzing sound finally came. He opened his eyes. In the circular hall, on the surrounding walls, dots of starlight gradually lit up and flickered. He said softly, "Finally it's here." His voice was emotionless and his face was slightly lowered. His face was hidden in the faint shadow and couldn't be seen clearly. After a moment he finally got up and walked outside. In the quiet courtyard, the piled-up leaves suddenly flew up. A sound came from the door as if someone was preparing to open it. But in an instant the sound came to an abrupt stop. The courtyard that was silent to the point of desolation once again fell into a deathly silence. When the last Xian formation was drawn, Rong Xiu had already walked out of the room. He stood on the steps with his hands behind his back, and looked in the direction of the palace of the illusory god. There was a deep look in his eyes. Then he closed his eyes. The wind gradually stopped. In the palace of the illusory god, the light on the chaos holy jade gradually dissipated. The golden flames burning on the top of the white jade pillars also calmed down and burned quietly. It was as if everything that happened before was just an illusion. All of the restless changes quietly dissipated, but Yu Qian's brows furrowed even tighter. For some reason he felt that something was wrong. All the movements seemed to be related to Chu Luiyue. He looked at Chu Luiyue with a sharp gaze, as if he wanted to see through her from the inside out. Chu Luiyue ignored his scrutiny. She just stared straight ahead. The majestic palace was magnificent, noble and sacred. Even though he had seen it once in the Crimson Moon Desert, that was only an illusion after all. It was far from being as real as seeing it with his own eyes and experiencing it personally. She took a deep breath and continued walking. "Ayu." Tuanzi directly jumped out of Su Li's arms and ran over with her little feet. Chu Liyue's lips curled into a smile. He bent over and scooped up Dumpling. It was a soft ball with a hint of sweetness. Indeed, it had been a long time since they last met. Chu Liyue kissed the girl's chubby cheeks. Dumpling hugged her neck and giggled, rubbing its head against her shoulder. "Ayu, I knew you would definitely be able to come in." Chu Liyue finally remembered something. "By the way, why are you here? Shouldn't Dumpling be at Fengming Mountain?" Dumpling's big black grape-like eyes rolled around as she said in a childish voice, "Because it's boring to stay alone in Fengming Mountain. So I ran over myself. I was planning to walk around and see if there was anything fun, but I just happened to bump into Ayu." Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Dumpling obviously had other reasons for coming to the illusory god palace. But this reason didn't seem to be known by others. She pinched Dumpling's nose. "If I had known that our Dumpling was here, I would have definitely come in earlier." "Everyone, isn't this fast?" Yu Qian raised his eyes slightly and looked outside the door. He said coldly, "Jianfeng, close the door." Yuan Jianfeng was still shocked that Chu Liyue had actually entered the illusory god palace. Hearing this, he finally came back to his senses. Yes. He walked in and closed the door again, blocking the countless gazes outside. However, when he looked at Chu Liyue again, his expression was extremely complicated. A quarter of an hour ago, he was still certain that Chu Liyue would definitely not be able to enter. But now, as the door of the illusory god palace closed again, the spectators standing on both sides of the Star Road were stunned for a moment before they burst into an uproar. "Xuanhuan, you really went in? Didn't she not have a bloodline totem? And just now, the illusory god palace did indeed have the intention to reject her. How come in the blink of an eye? Speaking of which, don't you guys feel that something was wrong just now?" At this moment, another person stood on the Star Road. Wuxialover. He didn't care about the various discussions around him. He only rubbed his palms and looked at the last Shen formation on the Star Road with shining eyes. For this step, he had wasted tens of thousands of years, and even he himself was about to give up. Who knew that there would be a twist? After seeing Chu Liyue draw the Shen formation with his own eyes, he finally found a way to break it. Swish! A stream of light flew out from his hand and quickly condensed into a ring. He seriously recalled what he saw just now in his mind. He sighed in his heart and was even filled with admiration for Chu Liyue. She could actually think of such a method, and so naturally too, he muttered softly. "If I didn't know that she's not even 20 years old, I would have suspected that she personally created this Shen formation." At this point, he couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. Even here, logically speaking, he should be more confident than Chu Liyue. But this woman had a lot of trump cards. Every time he thought she was going to die, she would still be able to fight her way out and make everyone look at her in a different light. Just like now. He didn't expect her to be able to come in. In a moment of nervousness, he called her that. Yu Qian's expression turned even colder. "Don't call her that again. If I hear it a second time." Yes. Before he could finish, Nanjing Shu had already sensed the severity of the situation and hurriedly responded. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes. This was really strange. Wasn't it just calling her Master Yu? It didn't seem like a big deal. Why did Yu Qian care so much? He was the second divine envoy. Logically speaking, he shouldn't care about such a small matter. It was meaningless and unstylish. But looking at his reaction, she lowered her eyes to hide the ripples in her eyes. When she looked up again, her expression had returned to normal. Patriarch Nan, since the second divine envoy said so, you really have to be more careful in the future. Don't cause any trouble for yourself because of me. Nan Jinshu's face turned pale. You. Patriarch Nan, you said you would wait for me in the palace of the illusory god. Now that I see you, Patriarch Nan, you really keep your word. Chu Luiwei smiled. I'm new here, so I don't know much about the palace of the illusory god. I'll have to trouble Patriarch Nan in the future. Nan Jinshu's legs turned to jelly as he complained in his heart. Trouble? Chu Luiwei was already good at fighting in the past. Now that he had comprehended all the Shen formations in the Star Passage, he could be considered a top grandmaster. His combat strength was almost unimaginable. If the two of them really fought, he wouldn't even know how he died. Nan Jinshu forced a smile. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. He couldn't wait to avoid Chu Luiwei in the future. If he knew this would happen, he would have just stayed in his own residence. Why did he have to come here? Patriarch Nan and I are old acquaintances. There's no need to be so polite. Chu Luiwei smiled and said sincerely. Nan Jinshu couldn't wait to run away. It seems like you have some misunderstanding. Yu Qian looked at Chu Luiwei and said, entering the palace of the illusory god through the Star Passage only means that you have the right to enter the palace of the illusory god in the future. It doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want here. There are many places in the palace of the illusory god that you can't go to. Do you understand? Chu Luiwei blinked. I don't really understand. Second divine envoy, please tell me what those places are. I don't want to offend you in the future. Yu Qian's face was cold. He really didn't want to talk to Chu Luiwei, but the current situation. The main hall of the palace of the illusory god is where the divine envoys live. Chu Luiwei nodded. I see, Yu Qian continued. Since you've already entered the palace of the illusory god, I won't say anything else. Once you're here, just focus on your cultivation. Half a year later, those who can't reach the immortal state will be kicked out of the palace of the illusory god. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows. The qi of heaven and earth here was indeed rich and pure, which was very helpful for cultivation. For most cultivators, the biggest benefit of entering the palace of the illusory god was to increase their chances of reaching the immortal state. Only those who succeeded could continue to stay here. And those who failed would still be kicked out. The survival of the fittest, was the most obvious and cruel rule here. Thank you, second divine envoy. Chu Luiwei nodded. Yu Qian's eyes fell on Dumpling. Well, you should go back now. Tuanzi pouted unhappily and hugged Chu Luiwei's neck, refusing to let go. Yu Qian's eyes were cold. Chu Luiwei patted Dumpling gently. Anyway, I will be here in the future. Tuanzi, you can come whenever you want. Chapter 2367. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. In the palace of the illusory god, other than the main hall, there were many courtyards. The height of these courtyards was basically the same. In other words, standing here, it was impossible to see the situation inside. But she had just asked such a question. Most importantly, even in the illusion of the Red Moon Desert, she had not been to any other place besides the main hall. In other words, she really should not have known that there was another courtyard in the innermost area. Su Li glanced at Chu Luiwei and immediately smiled. Oh, about this, I had accidentally mentioned it to little Yu before. Fifth divine envoy, you wouldn't mind, right? Ruan Jianfeng glanced at Su Li. Su Li's lips slightly pursed and her eyes were clear. She seemed to be a little nervous. I didn't know where it was at that time. I just casually mentioned it. Ruan Jianfeng retracted his gaze and coldly said, that is the residence of the first divine envoy. Without permission, no one is allowed to go near it. If anyone dares to violate it, they will die. Chu Luiwei's eyes narrowed. The residence of the first divine envoy? She once again looked in that direction. Although she could not see anything through the eaves and walls, her heart was still shrouded in an extremely subtle feeling. Why did she say those words just now? After one glance, Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and looked down slightly. Thank you for your reminder, fifth divine envoy. Seeing that she was indeed curious and did not have any other intentions, Ruan Jianfeng finally let this matter pass. After walking for another quarter of an hour, he brought Chu Luiwei and Su Li to a courtyard. From today onwards you will be living here. Other than the few places that the second divine envoy mentioned, it's best that you don't casually walk around the entire palace of the illusory god. Otherwise, you won't even know when you get into trouble. Ruan Jianfeng's voice was as cold as ever. If you cause any trouble, no one will help you. Originally, Chu Luiwei came from the star path. The seventh divine envoy Jingyun Lai should have been half her backer. At the very least, she should have been biased towards her. Unfortunately, it was already not easy for him to protect himself. What else could he talk about? Moreover, because he didn't have a bloodline totem, his attitude towards Chu Luiwei had been very cold. But now Chu Luiwei had relied on his own ability to get in. This was undoubtedly a slap to Jingyun Lai's face. When he saw Chu Luiwei, he wasn't in a good mood either. Therefore, although Chu Luiwei had entered the illusory god palace, his situation was not optimistic. However, Chu Luiwei didn't care. She smiled. I know. Ruan Jianfeng didn't stay for too long. He left after giving out the necessary instructions. This time, only Chu Luiwei and Su Li were left at the door. Chu Luiwei watched Ruan Jianfeng's figure disappear before saying, "Mr. Su, let's talk inside." After entering the courtyard, Chu Luiwei quickly looked around. This place wasn't big and the furnishings were very simple. It was just an ordinary small courtyard and it seemed that no one had lived here for a long time. Fortunately, it was clean. Chu Luiwei and Su Li entered the house. Just as they closed the door, Su Li couldn't help but ask, "Little you, what happened just now? Why did you suddenly ask about the first divine envoy's residence?" Chu Luiwei helplessly laughed bitterly. "Mr. Su, I really don't know where it is. If I knew, I wouldn't have asked that question." Who didn't know that the first divine envoy had a special identity? Even the other divine envoys didn't dare to offend him. Why would she be so stubborn as to touch this bad luck? Su Li thought about it and agreed. "But why did you suddenly ask me that question? I remember that I didn't mention this to you before?" Chu Luiwei tapped her finger on the armrest and thought for a moment before saying, "This. If I say that I don't know, would Mr. Su believe me?" Su Li was startled. "What do you mean?" Chu Luiwei rubbed her forehead. "It was really troublesome to explain this matter. It's probably because I left some impression in the Red Moon Desert previously." She changed the topic. Su Li instantly understood. "That's right, I almost forgot about this." Obviously she believed Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei changed the topic. "Did you find anything here recently?" Su Li sighed. "There's no substantial progress." Chu Luiwei wasn't surprised. From the attitude of the Yu Qian and the rest, it could be seen that they were very strict with the palace of the illusory god. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult to find out anything. De Bao and Lan Shao must have been locked in an extremely secret place. This matter can't be rushed. It's better to take it slow. No matter what, now that we've entered the palace of the illusory god, we're finally one step closer. Su Li nodded. Nan Jinshu originally planned to return to his residence, but after taking a few steps, he saw Jun Jiuqing walking out of the main palace. He hesitated for a moment but still went over. "Family E." Jun Jiuqing's gaze landed on him indifferently. Nan Jinshu suddenly felt a chill in his heart. For some reason, he felt that Jun Jiuqing's state today was a little different from usual. It seemed like he wasn't in a good mood? But didn't he just come out of the main palace? Not many people could have this kind of glory. He didn't have it either. Because of this, Nan Jinshu was envious of him for a long time. So when he saw Jun Jiuqing's current state, he really couldn't understand. However, this wasn't the main point. Family E Xuanhuan is here. Jun Jiuqing's expression didn't change. "I know." Seeing how calm he was, Nan Jinshu instantly became anxious. "Family E, aren't you curious or nervous at all? That's Xuanhuan you were talking about. Haven't you thought about how she came in without a bloodline totem?" Jun Jiuqing didn't say anything. Nan Jinshu gritted his teeth and lowered his voice. "The Guqin score. It must be because of the Guqin score. The first two Guqin scores are with her." At first, Nan Jinshu couldn't understand how Chu Luiwei broke the rules and successfully entered the illusion god's palace. Until just now, he suddenly realized that it must be because of the Guqin score. That belongs to the illusion god's palace. Since she's already its master, of course she can enter. Nan Jinshu regretted it. He should have thought of this earlier. Otherwise, he wouldn't have offended her like that and dug such a big hole for himself. Now, even if he wanted to make peace, there was no hope. Jun Jiuqing looked a little impatient. "I know what you're talking about. What are you trying to say?" Nan Jinshu's chest tightened. Why did it seem like Jun Jiuqing didn't care about such an important matter? Chapter 2368. That music score belongs to the illusion god palace. The divine master and the divine envoys haven't done anything yet. What can you do about it? Jun Jiuqing's voice was cold. Nan Jinshu was taken aback and hastily said, he hurriedly said, it's not that I want to do anything. I'm just curious. The first divine envoy sent 2 divine envoys to the god-slaying mound to look for the 3rd music score, but they haven't returned yet. Are you talking about the 9th and 10th divine envoys? Jun Jiuqing interrupted him with a half-smile. They've returned a long time ago. Don't you know? What? Nan Jinshu was stunned for a moment. He really didn't know. Ever since he fought with Chu Luiwei and Mu Hongyu and returned to the Illusion God Palace, he hadn't left his room. Because what happened that day was simply too humiliating. He had no choice but to wait for things to settle down. That was why he didn't know what was going on outside, including the fact that the 2 divine masters had returned. Not only have they returned, but they're also being punished in the Illusion God Ocean, Jun Jiuqing said flatly. Nan Jinshu was stunned. He couldn't snap out of his daze for a long time. How is that possible? The 2 divine envoys were ordered to look for the 3rd music score. Even if they didn't find it, they shouldn't have been punished, right? Then do you know why they were punished? Jun Jiuqing smiled coldly. If you want to know, you can ask them yourself. After he finished speaking, he ignored Nan Jinshu and left. Nan Jinshu wanted to ask him a few more questions, but he didn't have the guts. Jun Jiuqing always gave him the feeling that he couldn't afford to offend him. Nan Jinshu couldn't get anything out of Jun Jiuqing, so he had no choice but to leave. Xuanhuan was wiping the table in the room. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing his fair and slender wrists. He was holding a rag in his hand. His expression was focused and serious, as if this was something very important. When Cindy entered, this was the scene he saw. However, the moment he walked in, Xuanhuan immediately sensed his presence. He stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at him. Xuanhuan's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but he held back in the end. However, his gaze towards Cindy was filled with respect. Cindy's gaze swept across the table. It was shiny and shiny. She really didn't know how many times he had wiped it. In fact, Xuanhuan had been doing this ever since Chu Luiwei went to the Star Passage and entered the Illusory God Palace. It seemed to be out of some uneasiness. When he was nervous or flustered, he would often do this. Master has already entered the Illusory God Palace, so there is no need to clean this place. Cindy Dao. Xuanhuan pursed his lips slightly. Yes. Chu Luiwei didn't stay in the Illusory God Palace for too long. The situation was different from when she first came. This time she didn't attract that amazing pressure. Everything was very calm. But when Chu Luiwei walked out, she was surprised to find that the people who were waiting outside on both sides of the Star Road hadn't left yet. The moment she walked out, countless pairs of eyes immediately fell on her. Chu Luiwei was startled. Looking over, she finally understood why everyone was still gathered here. Xiaoran was standing on the Star Road, cracking the last Xian formation. In front of him, just like Chu Luiwei, a silver halo quietly floated. At this time, a portion of the veined patterns had already been drawn inside the halo. It could be seen that Xiaoran's speed was much slower than Chu Luiwei's, and the smoothness was also a bit worse. But the overall direction was correct. As long as there weren't any mistakes later, he would be able to completely display it sooner or later. At that time he would be like Chu Luiwei, entering the Illusory God Palace from the Star Road. Xiaoran's entire attention was on the Xian formation in front of him, to the extent that he didn't notice Chu Luiwei coming out. However, the onlookers on both sides looked over with different expressions. Of course, compared to before, their attitudes and expressions had changed quite a bit. Master. Little Hachi smiled and waved her hand. Chu Luiwei walked towards the few of them. Chapter 2369. Mistress, why did you come out so quickly? Little Hachi asked curiously. They had thought that they would have to wait for a long time. Chu Luiwei smiled and said, I went in to find a place to stay, saw Mr. Su and Dumpling and came out. Dumpling is also here? Is she well? Yes. Chu Luiwei did not say too much. She stepped forward and pinched Aunt 11 and Aunt 12's cheeks. It's been a long time since we last met. The two of you have grown up. You must have suffered a lot in my absence all these years. It was unknown how the two young ladies managed to survive being stranded outside. Now, they had even broken through to the Supreme God level. Aunt 11, who had always been calm, showed a rare look of nostalgia. It's not hard. Aunt 12's eyes were already red. She pulled Chu Luiwei's sleeve and said, It's nothing. We're fine. It's still Master who had it the hardest. Although they had been outside, they had heard many rumors about Chu Luiyue. It had not been easy for her to come all the way to where she was now. Big Brother has always taken care of us. He has never let us suffer. Hearing Aunt 12's words, Chu Luiyue was relieved. Cini had done a good job in this regard. He had taken care of everything. He is also in the Illusion God Palace now. I will take you to see him. Xuanhuan and the others are also there. As she spoke, Chu Luiyue glanced at Wu Yao. She had to go back and talk about the Peach Blossom dock in detail. Wu Yao nodded imperceptibly. At this moment, Zhui walked forward and cupped his fists. He said with a joyful expression, "Mistress, I haven't had time to congratulate you." When Chu Luiyue finished the Star Path and entered the Illusion God Palace, he was too shocked and did not have time to say anything. He just watched as Chu Luiyue went in. Now that he saw her come out, of course he had to go forward and congratulate her. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up. Speaking of which, I still have to thank Treasure Pavilion. The mythical flame diagram had indeed helped her clear her thoughts and gave her the most appropriate reason. No matter how suspicious others were, she only needed to release the mythical flame diagram. Mingshu hurriedly waved his hands. I wouldn't dare. You were able to succeed mainly because of your own strength. Our Zhenbao Pavilion also shares your honor and is very happy for you. Ah. These were Mingshu's heartfelt words. Over the years, it wasn't that no one had read the mythical diagram of flame, but in the end, only Chu Luiyue had truly comprehended all the profound formations on the Star Path and entered the illusory God Palace. Wasn't this enough to explain the problem? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and smiled. You're too polite. I should be the one thanking the first master and second master. When the second master's body gets better, I will definitely pay him a visit personally. She probably wouldn't be able to meet the first master. But second master, however, she insisted on meeting him no matter what. His smile froze and he secretly complained in his heart. Why was Madame still thinking about this? Then I will definitely go back and talk to second master. Then I will have to trouble Lord Mingshu. After getting the answer he wanted, Chu Luiyue left with his people in satisfaction. The group of people left in such a carefree manner, leaving behind a group of people looking at each other in dismay. Just left like that? Why was the expression on Chu Luiyue's face as calm and collected as ever from the beginning to the end? She had finished the Star Path and entered the illusory God Palace. If it were anyone else present, they would probably be extremely excited. But she was like this, how to put it, it was as if all of this was natural for her. She had long expected this, or she had long been certain that she would be able to reach this step and obtain all of this. But she was just a person from the Divine Ruins world who didn't even have a bloodline totem. In the long 10,000 years, other than the seventh divine emissary Jinyan Lai, she was the only one who had entered the illusory God Palace through the Star Path. Even they were excited about this for a long time, but she was the only one who was calm beyond imagination. In comparison, their reactions seemed a bit excessive. Many people quieted down. After a long time, a low voice came from the crowd. Now that she has even entered the illusory God Palace, will she really be able to ascend to the heavens and become a god in half a year? No one answered. They had already discovered that all of the rules and principles seemed to be useless in front of Chu Luiyue. All of the so-called restrictions and impossibilities had become a joke in front of her. Then who would dare to say that she couldn't? Chu Luiyue and the others walked back. As they walked, Chu Luiyue asked about the two girls. What made her feel more at ease was that Cini really took care of the two of them. Other than not bringing them with him, he treated them even better than Little 13. Little 13 even had to undergo Cini's strict tests, but the two girls didn't need to. They only needed to work hard to eat their fill. Compared to other people, the two of them didn't need to cultivate because the pills they swallowed contained a shocking amount of energy. And the two of them had special physiques so they could completely digest all of it and convert it into their own strength. As a result, his strength naturally increased. This was something that others couldn't help but envy. N11 thought for a while and asked, Master, what is it like inside the illusory God Palace? Chu Luiyue only thought that she was curious, so she paused for a moment and said, Actually, there's nothing special, just that the spiritual power is more abundant and pure. Aunt 11 pursed her lips. Then, Master, can you bring us in to take a look? Chu Luiyue was really surprised this time. Aunt 11, you want to go in and take a look? Aunt 11 nodded and added, Sister also wants to go. Aunt 12 nodded lightly and looked at Chu Luiyue nervously. Mistress, is this inconvenient? I heard that ordinary people aren't allowed to enter the palace of the illusory god. It wouldn't be good if it made things difficult for Master. Chu Luiyue looked at the two of them thoughtfully. Probably because she had to take care of her sister. Aunt 11 had been independent since young and didn't like to trouble others. If she could do it herself, she would never ask others to help her. So she rarely took the initiative to ask for anything. As for Aunt 12, that was even more so. She had a soft personality and was very timid. Usually, if her tone was a little harsh, it would scare the little girl until her eyes turned red. Other than being obedient, she was obedient. She was extremely well behaved. And now, these two girls actually wanted to enter the illusory god palace to take a look? How rare. Chu Luiyue said, "The illusory god palace is heavily guarded, so it's not easy to go in. Even I can't bring you in now." The expressions of the two girls dimmed significantly. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and couldn't help but ask, "Why do you want to go in so badly?" Chapter 2370. Aunt 11 paused for a moment and said straightforwardly, "No reason, I just want to go." Aunt 12 nodded. "But if Mistress is so difficult, we won't go." Chu Luiyue thought for a while and touched the duo's faces. "I'll think of a way." The two girls rarely asked her for anything. If there was hope, she would still want to satisfy their wishes. Little Hachi stood at the side and asked curiously, "Mistress, other than what you just said, is there anything else different about the palace of the illusory god?" Chu Luiyue laughed. "Even if there is, it's not something your mistress can know now." The palace of the illusory god was full of forbidden places. Moreover, she had just entered, so how could she know so much? Suli had stayed there for so long, but she had not made any progress. "But I did see a few oracles." Chu Luiyue remembered what happened before. "The others were fine, but the 8th oracles seemed to have a deep hatred for me." "Xu Jing?" "Yes." Little Hachi coughed. "But I think I know." Chu Luiyue looked at her in confusion. Little Hachi blinked innocently. "It's just that I slapped her before." Who knew that she was still thinking about it? Chu Luiyue was speechless. For a moment, even someone as eloquent as her didn't know what to say. Aunt 11 was very curious. "Sister 8, didn't they say that the oracles are very powerful? You slapped her, but she didn't look for trouble with you?" Little Hachi shrugged. "She spoke rudely, so I had to teach her a lesson. As for looking for trouble with me, does your sister 8 look like someone who can be bullied easily?" Aunt 11 shook her head seriously. Aunt 12 whispered, "I remember Sister 8 said that only we can bully others, but we can't let others step on us." Little Hachi immediately went over and kissed Aunt 12 happily. "Sister 12 is really smart. You still remember this?" 12th Nyang blushed and felt a little embarrassed. But when she saw Little Hachi's happy expression, she smiled too. "I remember what Sister 8 said." Chu Luiyue glanced at her faintly. "Is this how a good memory is used? Of all things to remember, why do I have to remember this? No wonder Xu Jing was like that. No one would be able to tolerate this, right?" However, there was something strange about this matter. "Little Hachi, you gave her a slap and she let you go just like that?" Xu Jing was not that kind of person. Little Hachi shrugged. "Who knows? However, I saw that she seemed to have gotten herself into some trouble before, so I don't think she has the time or energy to think about it now. What's more, if she dares to take revenge, I'll immediately let everyone in the Illusion God Palace know that I slapped her." If this matter were to spread, Xu Jing wouldn't be able to stay in the Illusion God Palace anymore. Just the criticism and ridicule of everyone would be enough to drown her. Wu Yao followed behind them and shivered silently. He also mourned for Xu Jing for 3 seconds. Of all people to provoke, why did she have to provoke Little Hachi? In the 13 Yu guards, other than Big Brother, the rest would take a deeder when they saw Little Hachi. Who would dare to provoke her? That Xu Jing was really too much. If she really couldn't handle it, she would have picked a soft persimmon. How unlucky. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and said, "It's better to be careful." Xu Jing would definitely take revenge for the smallest grievance. After being humiliated like this, she would definitely not let it go. For some reason, she hadn't made a move yet, but it didn't mean that she wouldn't do it in the future. Little Hachi tucked her hair behind her back and smiled charmingly. "I know." However, the premise was that Xu Jing still had the ability. If she couldn't even deal with the problem of the Herb Mountain, then how could she continue to be the 8th Oracle? The group returned to their residence. Before they could enter the door, they saw xuanhuan walking over from another direction. "Second brother." Wu Yao was the first to shout. Xuanhuan looked up and was instantly delighted. 11th sister. 12th sister. Why are you here? Come and take a good look at me." Wu Yao was speechless. Xuanhuan walked over quickly. He was very tall. Even though the two girls had grown up, they only reached his chest when they stood in front of him. Xuanhuan bent down and patted their heads gently. It's been a long time since we last met. You've grown so tall. Aunt 11 and Aunt 12 were obviously very happy. They shouted in unison, "Hello, second brother." Aunt 11 looked over his shoulder. "Second brother, what's this?" Xuanhuan tilted his shoulders slightly. "Golden-winged raven-boned beast. I just picked it up a while ago." With a flap of its wings, the raven-boned beast flew onto Aunt 11's arm. Aunt 11 praised, "It's so beautiful." Sensing that Xuanhuan was very close to Aunt 11, the raven-boned beast let down its guard and rubbed its head against the back of Aunt 11's hand. Aunt 12 looked envious. "Sister, it seems to like you a lot." Aunt 11 stretched out her hand. "Here." Aunt 12 quickly waved her hand and took a step back. I don't want it." The raven-boned beast looked a little fierce. She had always been a little afraid of it. Xuanhuan laughed. 12 sister, look at this." As he spoke, he looked back and snapped his fingers. "Come here." As soon as he finished speaking, a round furry little head popped out from behind the corner. Xuanhuan waved his hand. That little thing was immediately encouraged and ran over to them. Its fur was white and golden, and it had a pair of big black eyes. Its 4 hooves were pure black. It was a divine beast, Windstrider tiger. However, this Windstrider tiger was still very young. It looked like it was only a month old. Chapter 2371. Aunt 12 let out an "ah" as she looked at the wind-stepping tiger in her arms. Her heart ached. How could this be? Xuanhuan paused and hesitated. After a moment, he didn't directly answer her question. "I think it met with an accident. It's still young, so I brought it back." He had always been close to all kinds of fiends and had raised countless of them over the years, so Aunt 12 and the others didn't mind. On the other hand, Chu Luiyue took another look at the wind-stepping tiger and fell into deep thought. This was obviously a fiend from the Illusion God Palace. If he remembered correctly, all the fiends here were raised in the Divine Beast Mountain, and the second envoy Yu Qian was in charge. Of course, the Divine Beast Mountain was completely open. Anyone could go, but they couldn't take the fiends away. Unless the cultivator formed a contract with the fiends. It was expected that Xuanhuan liked to go to the Divine Beast Mountain, but Chu Luiyue really didn't expect that he would bring one back. From what he said, it seemed that there was more to it. Chu Luiyue didn't ask in detail. He smiled and said, "Let's go in. Sun Yi and the others are also here." As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw Sun Yi walking out of the house. When Aunt 11 and the others saw him, they were also very happy. Sun Yi's expression was also a little gentler. The group was very lively together. Chu Luiyue looked around but didn't see Rong Xiu. Sun Yi saw this and immediately said, "Master, His Highness Saint is in seclusion." Chu Luiyue was stunned. She had known Rong Xiu for many years, but she rarely heard of him in seclusion. "I understand." She looked at Wu Yao. "Let's go in and talk." Mirror? In the room, after hearing Wu Yao's statement, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Wu Yao nodded. "Before we came, not only did the mirror not disappear, but it seemed to become clearer and more concrete as time passed." Chu Luiyue's hand slowly clenched. "Did anything appear on the mirror? For example, whose shadow?" "That's not true." Wu Yao shook his head. "Yu Jiu and I have been guarding the mirror day and night, but the mirror is always shining brightly. It's hard to look at it directly, let alone see a human figure." Chu Luiyue fell silent. For a moment he didn't know what to feel. It seemed like what she saw before wasn't an illusion. There was indeed a mirror in the Dao world. However, for some reason, there was no sign of Rong Xiu or her in the mirror. Or perhaps, only when the two of them stood in front of the mirror would such a scene appear. Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought. Every time she recalled the scene of that day, her heart would always feel faintly uneasy. The face reflected in the mirror was clearly the one she was most familiar with, but for some reason, it felt very unfamiliar. And Rong Xiu, Master? Master. Chapter 2372. Xuanhuan sighed. "When I went there again, I saw the real body of the wind-striding tiger. This little one was protected under its body and saved its life. I thought that it was still too young and it wasn't safe to stay there alone, so I brought it back. Such a cub wouldn't attract much attention even if it left the God Beast Mountain." Chu Luiyue nodded. "Let's raise it first." It just so happens that Aunt 12 and the others like it very much. Xuanhuan paused and said, Master, what they like the most isn't actually magical beasts. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. At this moment she suddenly saw Yi take out 2 universe rings and hand them to Aunt 11 and Aunt 12. These are some pills that little Hachi refined previously. Take them first. The 2 girls obediently took them and thanked little Hachi. Thank you, Sister 8. Little Hachi, who was lying on the rattan chair, sat up with a look of surprise. It turned out that Big Brother didn't ask her for those pills just to force her to break through as soon as possible, but also for Aunt 11 and Aunt 12. His previous resentment instantly dissipated and little 8 said with a smile, Big Brother, you should have said so earlier. Yi continued. If you need anything in the future, just ask her for it. Little Hachi's smile froze. Although she had always taken care of Aunt 11 and Aunt 12, how could she afford to raise them all by herself? Even if she refined pills day and night, it wouldn't be enough. Aunt 12 looked at Yi, then looked at little Hachi. Finally, she gently tugged at Aunt 11's sleeve. Sister, in this case, won't Sister 8 be very tired? Aunt 11 nodded her head seriously and said, Big Brother, Sister 8, don't worry. I heard that there's a mountain of herbs here. It's the same if we go there. Little Hachi immediately rejected. How can that be? Although there were a lot of heavenly treasures there, it would be inappropriate for his 2 younger sisters to eat them directly. She patted her chest. Don't worry, Sister 8 will think of a way. Bang. At this moment, a sound came from one of the houses. Immediately after, a rich medicinal fragrance spread out from within. Little Hachi's eyes lit up and she quickly stood up. The door opened and Jian Fengqi walked out with a jade box in his hand. His handsome face was filled with excitement. Success. After experiencing countless failures, he had finally crossed the threshold of being a senior doctor. Great. A tender and soft congratulatory voice could be heard. Jian Fengqi was stunned. He looked up and was stunned. Little Hachi had unknowingly appeared in front of him with a smile on her face. When she smiled, she was naturally extremely beautiful and charming. Her pair of watery eyes seemed to be able to speak, rippling with light. However, Jian Fengqi could not see her beauty at all. He could only remember the tragic memories of being constantly attacked and being kicked in the foot. Therefore, he subconsciously took a step back. What are you doing? Little Hachi blinked. Nothing, I'm just happy for you that you've broken through to senior doctor. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes warily. He did not dare to believe little Hachi's words now. Little Hachi turned around and waved. Sister 11, Sister 12. Come over quickly. Only then did Jian Fengqi see that there were actually 2 more girls in the courtyard. Aunt 11 and Aunt 12? Seeing those familiar yet unfamiliar faces, Jian Fengqi was instantly happy. In his memory, these 2 were still young girls. In the blink of an eye, they were already slender and elegant. Aunt 11 pulled Aunt 12 over. Brother Fengqi. This greeting really made Jian Fengqi burst with joy. You 2 are here too? Little Hachi looked at the 2 and smiled. Look, your brother Fengqi is now a senior doctor. If you're hungry in the future, come to him. He has a lot of stock here. Jian Fengqi's heart sank. Wait, what do you mean by this? At this moment he suddenly remembered the old stories about these 2 girls. They already had a huge appetite a few years ago, but now, Jian Fengqi's mouth twitched harshly. Don't be anxious. Hurry up and thank Brother Fengqi. Little Hachi urged with a grin. Aunt 11 immediately said. Thank you, Brother Fengqi. Aunt 12 also whispered. Thank you, Brother Fengqi. Jian Fengqi was speechless. How can I resist now that things have come to this? I seem to have been cheated. Chu Liyue looked at him sympathetically. How great is it to break through to senior doctor? In the end, before he could celebrate, little Hachi and the rest had already taken advantage of him. Yes, there should be a lot more to come. Jian Fengqi seemed to sense Chu Liyue's gaze and looked over with difficulty. Chu Liyue gave him a thumbs up. Fengqi is really generous. I'm impressed. Jian Fengqi was speechless. Is it too late to go back and pretend that I haven't broken through? At this moment, the void suddenly fluctuated. Immediately after, a figure fell from it. Jian Fengqi was quick to react as he immediately went forward and hugged her. This had happened many times recently and he had already practiced it. Mu Hongyu closed her eyes and waited for the fall. However, after waiting for a while, the expected pain didn't come. Instead, it seemed like, something doesn't seem right? She suddenly opened her eyes and bumped into Jian Fengqi's smug face. Hongyu, your skills have improved recently. You can always land in my arms so accurately. Mu Hongyu expressionlessly retracted her fist and jumped down. Isn't this more accurate? She said she would hit the left eye, but she definitely wouldn't hit the right eye. Jian Fengqi was heartbroken. You heartless person. Mu Hongyu clapped her hands. You're too weak. You dodge so slowly. If I don't hit you, who should I hit? Jian Fengqi choked. Aunt 11 looked at Mu Hongyu, then at Jian Fengqi. Brother Fengqi, is this sister-in-law? Mu Hongyu was speechless. This young lady is so pretty, but why is her eyesight so bad? Almost. Jian Fengqi immediately replied. Mu Hongyu rolled her eyes at him. Just as she was about to retort, Jian Fengqi took out a piece of paper from somewhere. I don't think this is the contract. He rubbed his palm and the piece of paper turned into powder. Mu Hongyu, I'll endure it. She turned and walked towards Chu Liyue. Swoosh. Jian Fengqi flapped his folding fan, covering half of his dark eye, and winked at Aunt 11. Not bad. Aunt 11 gestured a number. 10 master physician pills. Chapter 2373. Jian Fengqi's forehead twitched. This is robbery. He shook his head. No, I can only give you 5 at most. Aunt 11 squinted at him. 5. She and her sister couldn't even split them. This is too stingy. She extended her second finger expressionlessly. 20. Jian Fengqi's fingers trembled and his heart bled. You. Aunt 11, why are you becoming more and more like your master? Not to mention other things, this blackmail skill was really amazing. Aunt 11 raised her eyebrows. Aunt 12 was very envious and whispered. Sister, Brother Fengqi is praising you. Aunt 11, I heard. Jian Fengqi? Aunt 12 sighed. She also knew that she was too soft and couldn't even learn 1/10 of her master's skills. She couldn't compare to her sister, who was always clean and straightforward. Therefore, she had always admired her sister for coming here. I can't. You'll be fine as long as you stay by master's side in the future. Aunt 11 consoled. Aunt 12 nodded vigorously. Okay. Aunt 11 raised her chin. Aunt 12 mustered her courage, extended her hand and stammered. Dish 30. Jian Fengqi, I can't live like this. He gritted his teeth. 20. I can't give more. Deal. Aunt 11 stopped, satisfied. Jian Fengqi felt a little stuffy in his chest, and he pounded it a few times before he could breathe again. On the other side, Mu Hongyu had already arrived in front of Chu Liyue. Her eyes were filled with excitement. Seeing this, Chu Liyue vaguely guessed something. Mu Hongyu lowered her voice. Liyu, I left the heavenly gate today. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Although I wasted a lot of time and effort in the middle, I finally succeeded. And I shouldn't have been discovered. Mu Hongyu was also very excited. During this period, she had been studying the Mahayana realm, but unfortunately, because there was no one to guide her, her progress was slow. Helpless, she could only try again and again. She couldn't even remember how many times she had failed. But he finally succeeded. Chu Liyue took her hand and walked to the side. Does anyone else know about this? Mu Hongyu shook her head. I've already checked before. The person in charge of guarding the gate of heaven is the 11th divine envoy Qiu Tong. However, his strength is not as strong as the 7th divine envoy Jinyan Lai. His control over the gate of heaven is also much weaker. It's not difficult to avoid him. Her almond eyes sparkled. Liyu, now that we're out of the heavenly gate, I'll definitely be able to enter the illusionary god ocean and find master after some time. Chu Liyue stared at her. Perhaps it was because she had failed countless times during this period of time, but there were many scars on Mu Hongyu's face and body. However, she had never said that she would give up and had persevered until now. Chu Liyue gently exhaled. Hongyu, thank you. Mu Hongyu shook her head. What kind of relationship do we have? You're treating me like an outsider. Moreover, I also want to save master as soon as possible. This is what I should do. The illusionary god ocean was dangerous and treacherous. Fifth xianxia was trapped in it and suffered much more pain than she did. Therefore, she didn't dare to relax for a moment. Her mind was filled with this matter. Chu Liyue's lips curled up and his gaze was fixed. That day won't be far away. That's right. Mu Hongyu suddenly thought of something. The 9th and 10th divine envoys seemed to be imprisoned in the illusionary god ocean as well. What? Chu Liyue was shocked. How is that possible? Are you sure? Didn't we see those two before? I won't be wrong. It's them. However, they're imprisoned in different places from masters. I wanted to investigate carefully, but I was worried that I would be discovered if I was out for too long, so I hurried back. Mu Hongyu was confused. I don't know why they're imprisoned. Chu Luiyue fell silent. Most people in the illusionary god palace obviously didn't know about this. The only person who could imprison them in the illusionary god ocean was the divine lord or the first divine envoy. According to Nanjin Shu, the two divine envoys had gone to the god-slaying tomb on the orders of the first divine envoy. In that case, there was an 80 to 90% chance that this matter was the work of that person. Was it because they couldn't get the music score? But at that time in the god-slaying tomb they weren't even there. When Chu Luiyue arrived at the tomb of the god, the two divine envoys were already gone. Now that he thought about it, he was still confused. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and said, "Since no one knows about this, let's keep it a secret." Mu Hongyu nodded. "I know." As she spoke, she asked curiously, "What's the matter?" "Liu, I heard that you've entered the palace of the illusionary god?" Chu Luiyue smiled. "Why are you all so curious about the palace of the illusionary god?" "Of course. All the cultivators in the palace of the illusionary god want to go in." Mu Hongyu rubbed her nose. "By the way, I heard from Lord Ji that I'll be qualified to enter the palace of the illusionary god after reaching the Mahayana realm." Chu Luiyue also knew about this. The palace of the illusionary god was powerful and sacred. All the cultivators wanted to go in and have a look. Other than the divine envoys, the other cultivators had several ways to get in. The first way was to comprehend all the Shen arrays on the star path like Chu Luiyue and enter from the front door. The second way was to become a refiner saint and get a trace of energy from the chaotic sacred jade to enter. The third way was to become a medical saint. This was also very difficult. Xu Jing was the only medical saint in the entire illusionary god palace. In the past 10,000 years, no one had broken through to become a medical saint. Chapter 2374. Zhenbao Pavilion. Zhao rushed back quickly. Because most people were attracted by the commotion on the star path, there were not many guests in Zhenbao Pavilion today. After he came back, he locked the door and went up to the second floor, heading straight for the room at the end of the corridor. Yen-gu was standing by the window with his hands behind his back. "Second master." Hearing the commotion, Yen-gu turned around with a proud smile on his face. "You're back." Looking at his expression, Zhao knew that he must have known everything that happened on Chu Luiyue's side. But this was normal. After such a big commotion, it was hard not to know. Madame entered the palace of the illusory god. After a while, she went out again. It seems that a few of her subordinates came. Mingshu told him the truth. Also, Xiaoran was inspired by Madame and is trying to crack the last Shen formation. If nothing goes wrong, he should succeed this time. Zhao was also surprised by this. He stroked his beard and sighed. That's hard to come by. Xiaoran has been stuck on this for too long. He had a good relationship with Xiaoran, so he was naturally happy to hear this news. Mingshu paused and asked, "Second master, Madame said that when you get better, she wants to visit you personally?" Yen-gu waved his hand. No. Just say that I'm bedridden and seriously ill." Anyway, he could not meet her now. Before his master gave the order, he did not dare to make a decision. "Zhao. Then are you going to keep hiding like this?" How many times had he said this? Madame clearly did not intend to give up and insisted on meeting him at least once. Yen-gu also had a headache. He rubbed his temples. "Wait for master's news." "Yes." Dumpling was sent to the boundary by Yu Qian. She stopped in her tracks. "I'm here. Can you leave now?" She felt really uncomfortable staying with this person. Yu Qian did not care about Dumpling's disgust. Anyway, she just needed to cultivate properly and open her meridians as soon as possible. Yu Qian looked down at her condescendingly. His voice was as gentle as ever, but the words he said were extremely domineering. "Before you open your 8th meridian, you cannot cross this barrier and enter the palace of the illusory god." "What?" Dumpling frowned. "I don't agree. I don't want to." How did she know when he would be able to open his 8th meridian? If it didn't open in 10 years, didn't that mean she wouldn't be able to come for 10 years? "That's not what you said earlier." "I've changed my mind." Yu Qian smiled. If Chu Luiyue hadn't come in, it wouldn't have mattered if Dumpling had come in. But now, no. Even though there was no contract between the two of them, Tuanzi had grown up by Chu Luiyue's side and was very dependent on her. If things continued like today, then the bond between her and Dumpling would never be completely removed. Therefore it was better to cut the Gordian knot. If you don't want her to be bullied in the palace of the illusory god, it's best if you can break through as soon as possible. Yu Qian's words were already an undisguised threat. Dumpling gritted her teeth, her small face flushed red with anger, and her eyes instantly burned with golden flames. However, Yu Qian didn't seem to care. The current Dumpling was still not his match. After a long confrontation, Dumpling finally gritted her teeth and said, "All right. Just you wait." Sooner or later, she would settle the old and new grudges with these people. With that, she tiptoed and headed straight for Fengming Mountain. A resplendent light flashed past, and her figure disappeared behind the barrier in the blink of an eye. Yu Qian stood there for a while before turning around and leaving. Dumpling returned to Fengming Mountain with a belly full of anger. When she arrived at the top of the mountain, she took out her ancestor's golden feather and gently brushed it with her small hand. "Grandpa Patriarch, don't worry, I won't be bullied by them forever." A faint light flashed across the ancestor's golden feather. Dumpling carefully put it away and decided to turn her anger into motivation. If he didn't want her to go, then she wouldn't go. "Anyway, you could come over." However, she didn't know if that black shadow would come and peek at her again after today. After sitting there for a while, Dumpling put away her thoughts and began to cultivate again. Chu Luiwei originally wanted to see Rong Xiao and discuss some things with him. Unfortunately, he was in seclusion and she didn't know how long it would take for him to come out. She didn't continue to wait and returned to the palace of the illusory god after dealing with the matters here. At this time, Xiao Ran's profound formation had already completed one of 3 parts. There were still a lot of onlookers. However, when Chu Luiwei came again, she found that Mu Yafeng's figure seemed to have disappeared. She thought for a moment and a faint smile flashed across her lips, but it disappeared in an instant. Then she entered the palace of the illusory god. Chu Luiwei walked alone to her residence. When she passed by the 7th divine emissary's courtyard, she stopped and looked over. However, she wasn't looking at Jinyun Lai. The first divine emissary lived in a remote and quiet place, obviously not wanting to be disturbed. Although Chu Luiwei was curious, she knew that this wasn't the time to go over. Even the other divine emissaries found it difficult to meet him, let alone her. At this moment, a gaze fell on her. Chu Luiwei looked over and nodded slightly at Jinyun Lai, who had just walked out. He didn't come out but stood on the steps and looked over. Chu Luiwei smiled and turned to leave. Jinyun Lai frowned slightly. Chu Luiwei didn't seem to be coming for him just now. After thinking for a moment, he turned his head and pondered. Was Chu Luiwei looking at the first divine emissary just now? Chapter 2375. In the following period of time, Chu Luiwei stayed alone in his courtyard, cultivating quietly and never went out again. However, outside it was getting more and more lively. Herb Mountain. Little Hatchie brought Aunt 11 and Aunt 12 here, planning to choose more herbs to make some snacks for the 2 girls. It was the first time the 2 girls came here, so they were naturally very curious and excited, looking around from time to time. There were also many people looking at them. Little Hatchie was already eye-catching enough by herself, and now with the addition of the beautiful twins, they easily stole everyone's attention. Sister 8, there are so many people here. Aunt 12 had always been afraid of strangers, and now that there were many people looking at them, she was even more shy and subconsciously hid behind Aunt 12. There seemed to be more people than before. Little Hatchie nodded in agreement. She had been here many times before, but she had never seen so many people at the same time. There were shadows flashing on almost every mountain, and there were more than 1 or 2. Someone beside her heard her words and couldn't help but explain. "Miss Little Hatchie, there's only half a year left before the divine gate closes, so of course everyone is nervous." Little Hatchie turned her head to look, and the person who spoke was a young man. She blinked and smiled. "Oh, right, I almost forgot about that. There was a saying in the illusory god palace that the divine gate would close in half a year, and those who couldn't enter the illusory god palace before then would have to wait for the next opportunity. And the next time they would have to wait for tens of thousands of years. Such a long time was really unbearable, so many people worked hard, hoping to successfully enter the illusory god palace before then. For a celestial doctor, they had to break through to the medical saint level to obtain this qualification. It was easy to say but difficult to do. The difficulty of this was no less than the star path of a mystic master. However, cramming at the last minute doesn't seem to be very useful, right? Little Hatchie was a little disapproving. The young man suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Although that's the case, if you work harder, you can always have more hope, right? Number 8 shrugged and curled the corners of his lips. Although I don't really care about it, thank you anyway. The young man's face reddened slightly. Little Hachi looked at the two girls beside her. Let's go. Just as he took a step forward, the young man spoke again. Miss Little Hachi, please wait. Little Hachi paused and turned around. Is there anything else? Actually, it's nothing important. It's just that. I heard that Little Hachi already has someone she likes? The young man asked carefully. He stared at Little Hachi without blinking, afraid that he would miss something. As soon as this was said, many people around immediately pricked up their ears. There had long been rumors that Little Hachi had firmly rejected Xianxia because she already had someone she liked. Moreover, that person had also come up from the Divine Ruins world and was currently in the illusory god palace. Unfortunately, that person didn't seem to come out much, so no one had seen him before. Over time, some people began to have doubts about this matter. Now that someone had asked, everyone was naturally very concerned. Aunt 11 and Aunt 12 immediately looked at Little Hachi with bright eyes. She had Sister 8's husband? Why hadn't they heard Sister 8 mention it before? According to Sister 8's personality, it shouldn't be. Little Hachi bent her finger and gently tapped on their foreheads. After not seeing each other for a few years, her gossipy heart was still the same. She tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled. Yes, what's wrong? Hearing her affirmative answer, many people revealed disappointed expressions. The young man's expression also froze. After a while he replied awkwardly. Then, to be able to make Little Hachi fall in love with someone like that, he must be very outstanding, right? Otherwise, why would she give up on Xianxia? Little Hachi's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. This seems like he's trying to get some information out of me. However, she didn't mind. She didn't even hesitate to reject Xianxia, let alone these people. Originally, she pulled Yanqing in to avoid these troubles. Thinking of this, she nodded with a smile. Yes. Seeing that Little Hachi wasn't willing to reveal too much, there were still people who didn't give up and asked. I've always heard of this person, but no one has seen him before. Little Hachi, even if your sweetheart has a shy personality, it's strange that he hasn't come out after being in the Illusion God Palace for so long, right? Once this was said, it immediately attracted the approval of many people. Ever since Xianxia returned, they were very curious about that person. It was a pity that he didn't even come out of the courtyard, so it was really difficult to meet him. Now that someone finally asked, everyone naturally wanted to hear it. Little Hachi crossed her arms and said lazily, he doesn't like to come out, so naturally he doesn't come out. What's so strange about that? Although that was what she said, Little Hachi actually had the same question in her heart. Logically speaking, Yanqing's talent wasn't bad, and he also had the bloodline totem of the Yuntian Tower. Even in the Illusion God Palace where geniuses gathered, he would be one of the best. However, he didn't seem to have any interest in these things. Most of the time he stayed in the courtyard and didn't come out. Even when he went out occasionally, not many people seemed to have seen him. However, she didn't plan to discuss these questions with these outsiders. Many people looked at each other. After a while, someone couldn't help but ask. Miss Little Hachi, this person can't be hiding something, right? Little Hachi's beautiful eyes were instantly dyed with a layer of coldness. She sneered, our family's brother Yanqing is extraordinarily handsome and talented. How can you casually slander him? As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a sharp female voice. Who are you talking about? That you're tuning in to the Sworddance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.